Okay, I would like to call the Board of Trustees meeting together on Tuesday, June 17th at 7:10 PM. Roll call, please.
Lino,
Here.
Abshire. Here. Baker.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Duffy.
Here.
Scattergood.
Here.
And Zajac.
Here.
In order for everyone to hear any discussion, would you please turn off all cell phones or noisemakers? Put them on silent. First item on pages 2 to 7 on your Zoom, approval of the minutes as published.
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Additions, corrections, changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Let's start with correspondence. Any correspondence?
Yes, sir, we do. We have one item of correspondence, and that is from the Door County Humane Society, a letter in appreciation of the public sector support that we provide in the amount of $1,000 to that organization. They care for nearly 800 animals last year, and are grateful for what you all do as a governmental body.
Comments, concerns from the public. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item? Please state your name and address and have at it.
Lee Telfer, 12-2 John Garrett Bay Road, Wilson Bay. I represent Kurt Wilsey and my wife Ruth Telfer, and they are the owners of the Betty Wilsey office building out here in the corner of 42 and Mill Road. And it's a fairly small parcel of land. And what's happening with the DOT is that they want to get another 8 feet of right-of-way in there, as you're well aware. We're changing it from 25 feet to 35 feet. I'm sorry, 33 feet. And what that would do is, well, first of all, they're going to pay us for the 8 feet, but they're going to take the 25 feet that they already have an easement on. So they're essentially taking 40% of the lot away from us. And we're getting paid for 5%. However, what that does is that makes the lot non-conforming. By their calculations, it is 13 feet short of a conforming lot. I surveyed it, and back in the 70s, I think, or 80s, and I did the calculations, not coming out about 51 feet short. So it's basically a non-conforming lot at that point. What we're concerned about is the loss of value, because if we go to sell it, somebody's going to look at it as a non-conforming lot. Now, basically, there are restrictions. We've got copies of restrictions on the state that allow us to build it if the building completely burns down. And we don't want to get stuck in a position where if we want to do something to the building, I don't know what the ordinance requires, but say we want to put a new roof on, and we have to apply for a permit to put a new roof on. We don't want to have to apply for a variance and go through the whole variance proceedings before we can put a roof on. So we're looking for any support we can get out of the village to either, well, if they want the 8 feet, I guess we can work out something for them for the 8 feet, but as an easement, not as fee simple, because they're basically taking that property from us for about 1/8 of what the area is that they claim they're getting. So we'd like the board to be aware of that, and if there's anything they can do to give us some support with DOT, we greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Lee, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are you looking for relief for the non-conforming lot?
Well, yes.
In the village, we can try and talk with DOT, but we can't control what DOT does as far as their right-of-way, that sort of thing. But if your concern is if you tried to sell the property in the future, or somebody wanted to build something different on it, since it's a non-conforming lot, that you wouldn't be allowed to.
Right.
Okay. So is that the relief you're asking for? Could the village take a look at, via the planning commission and the board, doing something with the lots that are affected along 42 as a result of this reconstruction?
Yes, yes, that's our main concern. And the way I understand, the way I read this, the statute is that if you you can rebuild it, but you have to use it for the same use. And if we were, you know, if somebody wanted to buy it for something else, you know, I don't know, I'm not really sure. I didn't, I'm not an interpretation of
Yeah,
it.
a couple of points on it, Lee. One is under the current village ordinance, if that building were to burn down, they wouldn't be able to rebuild it, period. It would just become a vacant lot for possibly assemblage or something at a later date. In terms of the state statute, it's Act 215, if memory serves me. That precludes our local ordinance, so we have a bit of a conflict there, at least on the surface in my investigation into this. The state code would allow them to build back and would supersede our local ordinance, again, on initial investigation. The issue is our local ordinance is in conflict, and while the state code covers them in an event of a disaster, it doesn't cover them should somebody want to put a different type of structure there. If more than 50% of that structure were altered due to renovation or whatever it is they would want to do there, or if they would want to make additions at some point, they'd be unable to do so.
Okay, so it's something to put on as an agenda item for the plan commission to evaluate and look at
Yes, sir.
what could be done.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll be happy to put it on the plan commission agenda for the plan commission to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hadn't planned to speak, but our property has kind of a similar issue, but this is an issue that's affecting the village as a whole in that block from Curtin Air property down past us. I'm sorry, my name is Greg Casperson, I'm the Casperson funeral. Is that the state is attempting to acquire a wider right-of-way, you know, through in front of our property, which I didn't really like the fact of trying to acquire it, but I also know for the betterment of Sister Bay, I wouldn't want to stand in the way and lead up right up to our property, almost up to the building. The only problem, and I was kind of hoping that Sister Bay would talk to maybe a few of the property owners along the way and talk to the DOT, because when I went to the open meeting with the DOT, I said, I don't have a problem with giving you a right-of-way, easement, just like you already have in the road, because our property lines are taken right to the center of the highway. And my biggest concern was, you know, whether they come up right up to our building. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do it for nothing. Just give them the right of way to do it. But they don't want that. They want to acquire the property. And what bothers me is if they acquire that extra 8 feet or whatever is in front of my funeral home, then what happens to the road easement that we have, which all is included in our property when you consider for building, for any type of space, you're taking about a quarter of an acre off my property because it'd be 100 and some feet long and 37 feet wide if you lost it all up to the center line. And I understand states' rules have changed over time, but you have a non-conforming or an issue with downtown Sister Bay, why they would have a problem with just granting the easements needed at no cost, and I can't speak for them, I can't speak for Lars or other people, but I'd be willing to grant it at no cost to them and let them go through and get set, and it could be done in no time at all as far as those issues, but they're holding everything up because right now they already sent an appraiser out to appraise my property. And if I disagree, it's going to be appraised again, and then it goes to a third appraiser at the state's cost. And I don't mean to be smart about it, but like I told the state at the time, I said I'd gladly stand up at a meeting and ask why the state wants to spend a lot of money for something they have for nothing, just because it's a rule, but not common sense. And that's what I told them, that was the end of the discussion at the open meeting. So, and I said I'd be bringing a few people from the newspaper behind to listen to the discussion. But no, I'm not going to be smart, I'm happy to do it, I want to help Sister Bay. Let's get this settled and use common sense. All we're doing is they have a right-of-way right up to the building like they do now. And hopefully on my property, that building will go away and it's going to be irrelevant. But there are buildings it affects, and I think, again, I'm not speaking for Lars or anybody, but if you could get that right-of-way just granted at no cost, but as a road right-of-way, but still kind of count as your property, I think it relieves 90% of probably some of your issues too, because you'd still be there out to the center line. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Anybody else? Please.
Yeah, I don't really have, I'm Rodney Hiddane, I'm a taxpayer. And I say an interested taxpayer, I don't know if I should be concerned or not. I've never been too involved in the board meetings here, but I pay about $12,000 worth of tax to the village part of it every year. And this year when I was paying my tax and also paying my Liberty Grove tax, I figured out that if I lived about another 800 feet further north, I'd pay Liberty Grove, or I'd pay about 8,000 less a year. So I just want to get more involved and find out what the big difference is between Liberty Grove and Sister Bay. And I can afford to pay the taxes. I don't know if my folks or my kids can afford to pay them in the future. I know my grandpa paid, I think it was $8 in taxes in 1920 when he bought the property. Now we're paying 30-some thousand.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? Thank you. We are going to take a couple items out of agenda order. We're going to go down to item 5, 6, and 7. We'll start with a motion to act on various types of liquor, soda, and cigarette licenses. I will recuse myself for this part of the meeting since I am one of the licensees of business owners. I would ask Patrick to conduct the meeting for this purpose.
Okay, so we are on item number 5. We are recommending that the board approve the following licenses and permits for the period July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2015. I just go number 1, soda water beverage license permits as listed.
Well, we can. Any comments, Ms. Sully, on this?
On soda and that?
No,
It's all
okay.
good.
Okay, so we need a motion to
Motion
approve
to approve
as
as
presented. So moved.
Second. Do I have to recuse myself too, because we have a soda license?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Just vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, item number 2, cigarette license permits as listed. Any issues, Christie? No? Okay. Anybody else need to be recused?
We don't sell cigarettes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the cigarette license permits as listed?
So moved?
Second it.
Okay, Pam, that was a second?
Yeah.
Okay, first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, number 3, operators and agents as listed. That's all good, all right.
I will continue to recuse myself on this one.
Okay.
Operators and licensees, I had a question. Because I know that Bryn is not going to be working
Yes.
at Al's anymore. Then can they have another person come on? Or do they have to have that listed right away?
No, it's okay if they have
Okay.
somebody that takes the class and is qualified.
Okay.
It's fine.
See, I read. I do read.
Very good, Pam.
Thank you.
Would you care to make a motion to approve the operator and
I
agents
would,
as
I would
listed?
like to make that motion to approve the operator license.
I'll second
Do you
it.
want to do the agent designation listing as well?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So who seconded it?
I'll second as
Scott
a
seconded. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 4, various liquor licenses as listed.
David, can you do your
Took
duties?
care of what they needed to take care
I'm
of.
under
on time.
the beer license.
Fantastic.
Yeah, let Pat continue to.
Yeah.
You would do the Class A beer license, Pat?
Isn't that what I said? Okay, we are looking for a motion on Class A beer license. Not beer and liquor, just beer?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve Class A beer license. I'll second the Class A beer license. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I believe I will now resume my duties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should get a raise?
Okay, now we will discuss the Class A beer and liquor license. Is there a motion to approve as presented the Class A beer and liquor licenses?
So moved. Second.
Christie, any issues?
No.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Class B beer and liquor licenses. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I have one question on the Class B. For any issues with you? Okay. Last year, this board approved the Class B at Husby's and Sister Bay Bowl to operate longer than what is indicated down here on the bottom.
I have a copy of the restrictions on the license,
Okay.
and that will pertain to those establishments. That one specifically came off of Husby's.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Oh, yes, you're saying on this sheet, it says 11:30 at night or until 2 AM, and,
This is,
yeah,
Correct.
we should update our sheet
We
to match.
said that I think it was 11:30 at night, they had to move indoors.
there are individual restrictions on their licenses attached to those licenses. The sheet that I've just handed the president is the one that goes along with that.
Okay.
On it says outdoor sales cease by 10 PM. Outdoor seating must be vacated by 11 PM.
Okay.
Last year, it was 10 and 10, and we allowed the extra hour, so someone could sit out there and finish their drink or whatever until 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
So this needs to be corrected to reflect,
What is on the restriction,
What
you
is on
don't
the
keep the
restriction.
restrictions the same.
yes,
Okay, so what do you want it to be? So it should be outdoor sales of alcohol beverage must cease at 10:30 PM?
At 10,
At 10?
and then seating must be vacated by 11.
and this is the same as last year.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And all outdoor seating must be vacated by 11?
Yes,
Okay. You want all outdoor music to cease by 11 as well?
yes.
They would still have to fall within the other code sections that you have.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought that was 10:30, and then they had a half hour to, same type of thing to finish, wasn't it?
I
10 or
would
10:30?
have related the same thing by a different board member, so your recollection may be correct. The transfer on the restrictions from the previous year, this is what it says. I don't know where that came up in discussion.
Yeah, I want to say somebody had an objection to 11
Wait,
o'clock.
You know what, there is something different.
The music was under or something else.
We allowed, I also don't think they stopped serving at 10. I think we allowed them to serve till 10:30.
10:30.
That's what I thought
That's
too.
That's what it was last
Correct.
year.
Yeah, then they had to move
And
inside
then
by
move inside
11.
by 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you said all outdoor music must cease by 11 last
Right,
year.
outdoor music,
Yeah.
outdoor music.
And then you
So that's
also
what it should-
said
you wanna
whenever
approve
there's any
this
type of indoor
As you're discussing it
entertainment
now, and the restrictions
after
will be
11,
updated
all windows and
accordingly.
doors
Yes,
must be
right.
closed.
Right.
So we want to approve it based on our discussion tonight, that
The restrictions.
no restrictions on serving will end at 10:30. Music can continue till 11.
Yes.
But at 11, music stops and indoor and outdoor seating has to be vacated.
Okay, so have I got this right then? Outdoor sales of alcoholic beverages must cease at 10:30 PM, and all outdoor seating must be vacated by 11. Is that right?
Yes.
And music.
And music.
All outdoor music must cease by 11.
Correct.
Whenever there's any type of indoor entertainment at the licensed premise after 11 PM, all windows and doors must be closed.
Yes.
Want that again?
Yes.
Okay. Now, last year you talked about all outdoor patios must be kept free of weeds. Do you want that again?
Yes, the same. Free of weeds, pick up trash within 100 feet of
That
your
was-
license.
Shane had a big objection to that, and I don't blame him. Weed control on liquor licenses is not really the place to put it.
You have it in your zoning code in another place. You also have it in your, I think, in your nuisance code as well.
Yeah.
So you've got it in a couple of
And I remember
spots.
the
Just
discussion
slightly
last year,
noise
no
as well.
Shane objected,
That's what I'm saying, Shane
but it's also
objected.
the only place you can put it on
Yeah.
that carries any teeth,
Yes, yes.
and that was the reason for it.
Okay, and then last year you said if alcoholic beverages are served at the licensed premise during Fall Fest, the licensee must hire a bouncer or police officer to patrol the property and ensure that order is maintained throughout the festival. Do you want that again? Okay.
Same restrictions, right?
And you also said outdoor trash receptacles must be made available for patrons utilizing outdoor seating on the licensed premise.
Yes.
And then you have to,
So based on those,
and then you
Additional.
also have to say they approve of the drawings.
yes, that's my next question.
Okay.
Did you have any questions concerning the drawings this year?
No, they'll submit them, I have one set with all the copies if you want to.
Okay.
I'm going to make one statement on that, that's that Sister Bay Bowl has approached me, and this doesn't require submission to Plan Commission. to extend their patio by a couple of feet. So that drawing should be amended based on what they're planning on doing in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, but that'll happen when they bring the drawing.
So the present drawing is okay for the moment?
Sure.
So in addition to those restrictions that are what we put on last year, is there any other discussion on the Class B beer and liquor? Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Oh, we got a question in the audience. Or do you want to?
Yes?
Hi, I'm Michelle Stardy, and I'm 10867 North Bay Drive. My understanding was the outdoor music was supposed to end at 10:30. That music goes all the way down the water almost to Yacht Works. So 10:30 was quite late enough. And that was my understanding last year, and I'd like to encourage you to consider that again.
It was 11 o'clock is what was agreed to last year with the businesses.
You sure?
Yes.
I'm recalling 10:30 too.
The minutes said 10:30.
No, 11 is when their outdoor seating had to be vacated, 10:30 is when their liquor sales were
Music
cut off.
stopped, and then they had a half hour to finish their drink and whatever, and then be inside, but I thought the music too was,
Then I'm wrong.
that's all right.
I'm sorry, thank you for bringing it up, I'm wrong. Okay.
And, maybe it's not so much the length, but how loud they choose to play. It is so loud sometimes. It's, how can they even talk when they're
Well,
sitting
wind
next
too.
to each other?
If the wind's south, if you live north, you're gonna hear it more.
I hear it over here too.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is just ridiculously loud sometimes.
As your code enforcement officer, I can tell you my general rule of thumb metric on if it's too loud is whether or not my 2-year-old wakes up. Your nuisance, that's not an objective, form for what it is. My 2-year-old didn't wake up, and we had 6 complaints the next day on one of these license holders. I'm intent on ordering a decibel meter. Your code specifies 65 decibels under your nuisance section. Potentially, you all would want to amend that. That's approximately the volume with which I'm speaking right now. It's not much louder than 65 decibels, and that really does not allow much flexibility for music being played and objective measuring on whether or not they're staying within the restrictions of their license and within our code.
So where would you measure that from?
Yeah,
I mean,
distance.
the complaints don't come from the source. What radius do they get to?
I would say if you all,
broadcast that?
so that we can stay on the agenda, if you all want to direct me to bring this up at a later meeting date, we certainly could specify in an ordinance amending our current nuisance section a certain measurable at a certain decibel level from a certain distance.
Okay.
And that would rectify it. I will tell you that I've approached one of the license holders, and since then, I've heard nothing after that first approach.
Okay.
So they seem to have gotten things in fairly good order. And that one night, they were doing a shoot for the visitor center. So they had photographers there and a fairly loud band there as well. It was audible.
Okay.
Okay, so let's review the restrictions that we're talking about.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, a motion was made by Cole, seconded by Baker, that the village board approves the issuance of Class B beer and liquor license to Husby's in the Sister Bay Bowl, subject to the following conditions, which shall all be clearly delineated on each of the licenses. Outdoor sales of alcoholic beverages must cease at 10:30 p.m., and all outdoor seating must be vacated by 11 p.m. 2, all outdoor music must cease by 11 p.m.
No.
10:30. Will you change?
Okay, that's
Back.
10:30, okay. Okay, whenever there is any type of indoor entertainment at the licensed premise after 11 p.m., all windows and doors must be closed. All outdoor patios must be kept free of weeds. The licensee or a designee or designees must pick up any and all trash generated within a 100-foot perimeter of the licensed premise on a daily basis. If alcoholic beverages are served at the licensed premise during Fall Fest, the licensee must hire a bouncer or a police officer to patrol the property and ensure that order is maintained throughout the festival. And then lastly, outdoor trash receptacles must be made available for patrons utilizing outdoor seating on the licensed premise.
The only thing I would suggest is if we're moving them now at 10:30, then the windows and doors should be closed at 10:30, not 11 o'clock.
Okay.
I was gonna say.
You gotta make it, when I'm moving indoors, you gotta close it off outside.
Okay.
Anybody okay with that?
Yep.
And then the last one, the drawing of the premise to be covered, and if applicable, outdoor seating, outdoor serving locations, picnic areas, and beer garden drawings which were submitted by each of the licensees are approved as presented. Is that right? Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried.
Don?
Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
do have one question. For clarification, the difference between the Class B beer and liquor and where the music and the liquor is being served versus the Class B beer and Class C wine, are we going to be addressing the sound ordinance with
That goes
the
on
others
each-
as well?
Goes with
Those
that
things will
Okay.
go on each license.
Right. Next, special B. Which pertains to the Little Sister Resort. Any issues? There a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any difference in restriction on
Say what is
special B?
Last year you didn't.
Good, keep them all the same.
Thank you.
Makes it look easier.
Makes my job easy.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 300 seat B, license, Mission Grill and Northern Grill. I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Any issues?
Any issues on any of these?
No.
Okay, don't have to ask Chris any more questions.
So,
And it's subject to all the
The
things
restrictions will be attached to each
mentioned.
of these. So,
Great.
same.
Okay.
same, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We did Class A already. Class B, beer and Class C, wine. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Item number 6. Consider a motion to commend Mike Schnell for work on the Bay Shore Drive project. It is page 24 under Zoom. There is a
I would tell you all.
little report.
Yep, I would tell you all from my end that Michael's in the field daily attenuating things in the cold and the rain. You guys remember how negative the temperatures were this winter. As much or more so than any of our other guys, and served an observatory role when the engineers were not present at the end of the project. And that was my observation. I think he did a fantastic job, and I turned over to Steve Jacobson to make what comments he may as a direct supervisor there.
Mike put in extra hours. We were short-handed for most of the major part of the project. Extra hours without question. He was on site, worked well with coordination between the customers and the having to shut off water and valves and coordinating with people to make sure that they had water when they needed to, and working with the contractors as they were proceeding and not always telling us at opportune times when they were going. Mike worked well between all concerned to keep the project moving as well as it did during some difficult times. Difficult project. I think he deserves a good attaboy.
Motion for an attaboy.
I'll make a motion for an attaboy.
Is there a second to the attaboy motion?
I'll second the attaboy.
Any other discussion? I just want to add one thing. You know, it was a tough winter, weather-wise. It was tough on the village, traffic-wise. It was tough on utilities. So it's good to get some attaboys, and, you know, the project is done and behind us, it turned out well. And I can only hope that the current project coming in the future turns out well. But I think this was just a precursor of things to come, so.
Can I make one other comment on that?
Yep.
I full-heartedly support the attaboy and the letter of commendation. Do we have any plans of putting in a bonus program type thing that we could reward such service to, you know, in the future for somebody that does do
That
this?
can be referred to the administrative comp.
Come to the meeting on the 25th.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm looking for a bonus for showing up at the meeting, though.
Yeah. You can show up to me.
I think that meeting has been canceled
No.
or postponed.
At the moment, no. I'll follow up with you.
Oh, and I forgot to write that down on my time.
Me too. I thought it was not on there.
Okay,
Sorry.
moving along to page 26 on your Zoom. Resolution to approve 287-06-1714, approving the 2013, and is it 2013? Or 2014?
2013.
2013 annual compliance maintenance report for utilities.
Why would it be the 2013 report?
Because
What happened last year?
Yes, the
Last
year.
year.
that's the last full year.
Gotcha. All right.
Motion by Lino.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. I'm sorry, opposed? Carried.
Thanks, Steve.
Good job, Steve.
Congratulations.
Attaboy, Steve.
Yeah, that's another
Great point, Eric.
This is a kind of a zero report, though.
That's
It's a
what you
zero
want.
report. All I see is zeros.
That's what you want to see, John. That's when you start getting numbers on there.
When you live in the village, that's what you want
I
to
used to
see.
get those in sales all the time.
This is what you, this is what you want.
Okay, back on agenda, moving up back to item number 1, page 9 and 10 on your Zoom. Consider a motion to discuss and act on the recommendation of the Fire Board to adopt an ordinance 229-06-1714, repealing Chapter 14, Article 2, the automatic sprinkler system ordinance. Mr. Administrator.
This came across my desk courtesy of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and I referred it over to Chief Heck for his consideration and consideration by the Fire Board. Act 270 took effect April 18, 2014, and established a uniform commercial building code. To make the long and short of it, the Fire Board took this up and decided that our local ordinance requiring automatic fire sprinklers be repealed, such that we would default to the state code. If Mr. Duffy has any comments on that, or Mr. Baker.
I think it affects 4.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, see, the state wasn't doing this, and so the village at the time they put it in wanted to have something. Now the state's doing it, and since the state is doing all the building codes for commercial, it makes more sense to let the state handle it all and just pull back from our local code.
I will tell you all, Chief Heck did a terrific job in going through and analyzing the properties that actually were impacted by our local ordinance and identifying which ones actually were required to do something because of this local ordinance, and then analyzing the risks involved to the property between the local ordinance and the state code. So I think he did a very good job articulating that.
Julian.
Are there properties that currently have sprinklers that, under the state law, wouldn't need them?
They have to maintain them
Yes.
as they have them now.
Okay.
And as I recall, I think 4 was the number of properties that under the state code would not have had to put in sprinklers, and the local ordinance would have compelled them to do so. However, a couple of those did some things other than sprinklers to get around that, firewalls and fire protection other measures.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Page 11 and 12 on your Zoom. Consider a motion to discuss and act on a recommendation from the Marina Committee to amend the Marina Fest bylaws. I'll start. The Marina Committee has asked to amend the Marina Fest bylaws. I talked to John, the Marina Committee Chair, and I talked to Zeke, about these bylaws. If you reviewed them, obviously you see some differences in here. I thought it deserved a discussion publicly at the board level. This is a change from how Marina Fest has been operated in the past. In the past, it was looked at as a way for the, it started off many years ago as a way for the marina kids to give back to the community to help put it in place, and the taxpayers. And it was pretty much based on a not-for-profit, community-based issue. And things have changed over the years. Things have changed within the marina. And the marina is asking to change how we operate Marina Fest. And if you read and you can feel free to jump in a moment, John. If you read the proposed bylaws, they will keep the not-for-profit sector in place, but they are proposing to allow for-profit vendors or other businesses to take part in Marina Fest upon paying a fee for a location or a tent or whatever, and to sell other products still regulated by Marina Fest.
And not in competition with.
And not in competition with something that the not-for-profit.
And at a different, the not-for-profits pay 10% and have a minimal, don't have a setup. The other ones would have for-profit would have a setup fee of $250 and then 10% after that $250 of their profits.
And so what I'd like to do is separate out the discussion into two sections. The first section, the first part of the discussion is allowing the discussion whether we should change the Marina Fest concept to allow for-profit or other businesses to participate in Marina Fest, unlike it is now, and keep the bylaw portion of it separate for the discussion.
As a point of order, should I be making a motion to consider discussion on what you just said?
Now that we've had a report, yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So discussion, John, do you want to say anything, or anybody else want to say anything else about adding in for-profit types of entities into the Marina Fest?
The feeling was that we're getting stagnant, okay, with the Marina Fest. And if you look at the Marina Fest of the past several years, after the water board warriors leave at around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a huge drop-off and lull until the entertainment starts at night. And a lot of people leave, okay? And it's felt that we're getting a little bit stagnant, and we should, broaden our horizon a little bit and get some more activities. The activities like this year, we're going to add a cardboard boat building, type event. One of the things that I think is appropriate in Marina Fest that the new laws would allow us to do is to put like a Ferris wheel, down in the waterfront park as part of Marina Fest type thing. Maybe some carnival kids activities, more kids activities. We're going to do some carnival, bouncing toys type thing this year, but some things like that would have to be generated through profit, not to take away from our not-profits, and not really per se in the food venue, except for it probably lends itself to have wine tasting from our local wineries and from local breweries. So we may want to open that type of thing up. So that's the direction we're going. We're not looking to try to put a main competitor in to take away profits from the non-profit organizations. We're looking to broaden, the Marina Fest. I would also state in there that I think the Marina, over the years, I know the original goal was to help pay back the community for the Marina and what they had put into the Marina. The Marina is really the only revenue source that the village has that provides a tremendous amount of revenue to the village every year. And that Marina is directly responsible for keeping some of the taxes down. So contrary to what people have said, that paying back to the Marina and taxes through, the Marina has actually absorbed an awful lot of that taxpayer revenue that would have gone in the tax rolls that's absorbed by the Marina. Case in point, the Johnson property purchase was paid for by the Marina. Okay,
A portion
of it didn't go on the tax rolls. So the Marina does give a lot back to the community, and I think it's time that we expand. you know, to make it more of an event. Hopefully, I would like to see eventually go into a 2-day event. You have a lot of people here, you got a whole 3-day weekend. Why are we shutting it down in one day? You know, as we go through.
Having been Marina Fest chair at one point in time, I know one of the things we had always talked about potentially was getting into, it's a Labor Day weekend. You have all these people coming into town for Marina Fest. SBA had talked about at one time making it a music weekend. So maybe, you know, Saturday is the Marina Fest day, and then Sunday is a music day. So you could keep people in and around Sister Bay here for that weekend. There's not a lot of other festivals going around in Door County on that weekend. And it would be a way to keep people in Sister Bay. So that was also a discussion item. But that is also predicated on keeping people at Marina Fest all day long. Or
Yes.
have something all day long for people to come to.
Yep, exactly.
And I know at one time we had the
Strongman.
the strongman competition that kind of filled in the afternoon, but they got too expensive.
Yeah. And
I would like to suggest that there be some sort of a guiding mission for what this Marina Fest is going to evolve into, to provide some suggestion of guidelines for what kind of venues are going to be encouraged to be part of that. I think it's a great idea, but just to provide something, kind of like we are encouraging the village to have a look about it, what kind of a tone, what kind of, you know, what's the intent?
Well,
for it? You know, what
to
kind
your
of
point,
flavor?
to both of your points, part of that vision or what you're looking for is to make it a longer event. You know, not only to maintain the entertainment during the first day, but to carry it over for that weekend.
And I understand that, but that's to me more of a function, and I'd like to see what's the vision here? Is the vision to celebrate the waterfront of Sister Bay, and these are so everything would have some kind of a tone or a focus on celebrating the waterfront, or is it celebrating Labor Day, or is it celebrating
Donna, would you
whatever?
like to have it referred to Marina Committee for them to flesh out further?
There you go.
My comment was going to be that most hotels have a 3-day night, or a 2-day or a 3-day
3-night minimum.
to stay on, so you're having all the people come up here and they're staying in Sister Bay and they're paying for a 3-day, and yet we have an event that goes one day and we're sending them away.
I say Poker Sunday.
So is the general consensus at this point in time, it's okay to go ahead and move towards adding
Explore.
for-profit within the Marina Fest?
As long as it doesn't interfere with the nonprofits.
We had
And-
quite an extensive discussion on that, and we get into some gray areas when you say, beer and wine, okay, because that's a food item, or you could be under that category, we don't want to compete, with the other one, but there's a difference between the fire station selling beer, this end, and somebody having a tent with wine tasting, and,
My recollection of it, John, and those, I think we had 2 or 3 conversations about that, was specific brands.
Right.
For example, the fire station was selling Budweiser or whatever it was, and that would be their product line. That wouldn't preclude us from having Polka King, that craft brew tent somewhere else.
Sure.
We had that discussion, I don't want to have, per se, somebody selling brats, in 5 different stands. However, part of the discussion, and then you have to be aware of, is to use the total waterfront, as you're talking about, Donna, and the vision of the waterfront, and how we use it, how do we incorporate our new pavilion, okay, and put the music, because next year, very likely, the music and the entertainment is going to be coming from the new pavilion, not at a tent at Marina Park. And if you do that, you have to address how are we going to keep the beer and wine and brats on this end of the park, and beer and wine and brats on the other end of the park, okay? Because you're going to lose an awful lot of sales if you have all your entertainment sitting over here and all of your food vendors on the other side of the, 2 blocks away, okay? So we have to address that. That's going to be something that the committee's going to have to look at and see how do we do that? And maybe the nonprofit puts up a second location.
Right, could be as simple as Saturday is Marina Fest Day and the beer and stuff's on that end.
Yep.
And Sunday is the music day and the
And
music's
it's
on the
all
other
that,
end.
and it could be, or it could be the guy has two booths. You know, I mean, the fire station can sell beer and brats at this end and puts it at the other end, but those type of things.
One other thought would be to sit down with the nonprofits and say, look, what would your preference be on a spot, and give them the pick of the litter. So if they want to be close to the music, fantastic,
Right.
they go down and pick up those sales. Or if they want to be on the other end where it's quiet, fantastic, they go down and pick up those sales. Just to involve them in the
Has
planning
the,
process.
I'm sorry.
That was it.
Did the committee speak with the not-for-profits?
They're gonna bring it up the next meeting, we haven't had that, we had discussed it before, you know, briefly, not really as a, hey, we're gonna do this, but we discussed it when we were saying, where are we dropping, you know, in the past, and what happens to our, you know, sales during the day. And so, I think that is something we definitely have to bring up and be out. I don't want to, we're not here to try to surprise anybody, nor are we here to try to yank the carpet out from somebody and make them their sales, you know, type of thing. We just want to make it a better event for all of the village and all of the community.
So, I was gonna say, so we have a motion on the floor to go ahead and give the consensus vote that it's fine to change the concept of it, and in the for-profits.
Now, the bylaws that you have written here is in a second motion?
Yes,
Is that what
we're
you're
going to do the second on that.
Okay, because there's some things I want to change in that.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the concept of adding the for-profits into the Marina Fest?
No.
We bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that part's carried. The second part, what I was going to say was if you want to do a motion, that's fine. But I want to preface that with, I don't know that it should be up to us to make all of the Marina Fest bylaws for the Marina Committee, or for the Marina Fest Committee, but based on what you have here, we can make some comments.
There's a couple comments that I would make based on what we have here. Overall, I agree with that, and you do it to the committee as you're doing it. Number 9, I think you have to strike. You can't have vendors that leave before the fireworks show, so be ineligible to participate the following year. I mean, you got all the boat builders, you got the kids, you got the, you know, everybody is leaving, and you can't keep that sentence in there. And the only other thing in the charter, you have the Marina Committee is one member of each, the parks and the fire department, plus you have all the nonprofits listed as part of that committee. I don't think that committee should be, the voting part of that committee should not be all of the nonprofits as well as the 4 people.
I was going to kind of handle that in the committee appointments.
Okay.
I got confused at one part in there. Are you speaking on the Marina Fest bylaws that we're looking at?
Yeah,
You're talking
you had
about
the-
inside the actual.
Well, on the bylaws
board
that he's
and-
got here, he's talking about membership in committee shall be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marina Committee Chairperson, member of the Parks Committee, Marina Manager, and a citizen alternate.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we have a nomination
Right.
that the board will be looking at later for appointments to various committees, which are contrary to what is here, but we
Right,
had discussion
exactly.
about.
Right.
Okay?
It's talking
That's why I'm
about
saying
every one of the.
I don't want to vote on these bylaws, I don't want the board to vote on the Marina Fest bylaws that the Marina Committee and Marina Fest should be putting together.
Okay.
But I did want to point out some issues with it. Like
I
John
would
said.
point out those issues and make a motion to table this to or refer this to the Marina Committee to discuss at their next meeting with the vendors and participation.
And item 2 will be taken care of later on when we do the committee assignments.
Yes.
Okay. I would want to point out one other thing, John, that I would question that you guys can certainly talk about, and that's number 4, the commercial vendors. For the fee of $250 plus 10% of gross sales over $250. I personally believe that would eliminate most businesses in the village
From selling,
from taking part.
So,
Because the nut that you put there for somebody to reach in the available business probably isn't going to be viable. Let me give you an example. I'll use my business as an example. If I went down there and sold subs, I'd need to sell 200 to 300 subs to break even. You're charging me $250, I have to have 2 people down there paying them $10 an hour at least all day long. It's on top of it, plus another 10% of sales. Okay, I have to probably get $600 or $700 profit just to break even. Probably not gonna happen.
Okay.
So I'm suggesting that maybe take a look at, that's a pretty strong.
Well, we had that,
barrier
we had that discussion, and we raised it up to 250, and I was probably one of the ones talking about making it more, because I wanted to differentiate between the nonprofits and the for-profits, okay, and make it to the point where there is something that they're doing in the profits. And so I agree with what you're saying, and doing it especially for food. I was thinking more along the lines of somebody that put a Ferris wheel up or something like that. There's $250, there's probably an awful lot of participation. That's a pretty small entry fee to rent the park for the day or 2 days and have a Ferris wheel, with a lot of people on it. And so that's.
Well, understand, right now, what you've got is a one-day event,
Yeah.
okay, that you're gonna be operating for 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
All right, and not everybody that goes there is gonna buy something from every tent.
Right.
So I raise it, to me, I believe it's a barrier to local businesses to go down and do that.
How much
What
is
you-
Fall
what-
Fest?
What you will drive are people that are selling beer and wine.
Yeah.
Okay. A beer and wine vendor could probably make it off that, but other businesses, if you're trying to do something, would be very difficult.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
And I would, again, just reiterate that if there's a way to, within the bylaws or somewhere, capture what the spirit and vision is of the expanded, because the original vision was Marina Fest was a way for the marina to give back to the community. And while I think that's still there, we're talking about expanding that vision. So if the committee could take a look at what that is, articulate.
Mine is taken simply as a comment.
No, I agree, and it's somewhere in between there is, where you have to go, so.
If I could bring up one point on this.
Sure.
And this is it's merely a matter of procedure and policy. We're in a position where you all are the public policy sitting body for this municipality. This is a subunit of that. I'm going to use the term issue very lightly, and I stress that very lightly because I have an incredible working relationship with this young woman. That is the makeup of the committee membership when the Marina Committee considers this. And the Marina manager is appointed as a full committee member. I'm not a full committee member anywhere. I don't know how long Ms. Tatzel will be with us, but that potentially creates a conflict at some point later on down the road. Or if something comes up and I have to override one of her decisions. Now she's in a policy-making position as opposed to a policy implementation position, which is what we as staff members do. We implement policy, we don't create it. I humbly ask that you all take that into consideration.
I was going to
I think
take
it
that up
was
under
in the
the
marina.
appointments. But what Zeke is referring to is, it's not good policy to have staff on a standing committee in a voting role. And so the recommendation here was to take the marina manager, whoever that may be, and put them on the committee. And you'll see in the committee appointments I have, I don't do that for that very reason. I have her down as an ex officio member who can be part of the committee, but she's in a non-voting status, which doesn't put her in a conflict of interest,
Right.
staff versus policymaker. And that's very, Zeke mentions he's on a number of committees, but is not a voting member, he's an ex officio member. It would be the same thing for any staff person. You don't want to have a standing committee with a staff member in a voting capacity on it.
Steve and Juliana also serve in those roles as well in various committees they serve on.
So,
Okay, now, John made a motion that formulation of a recommendation for amendment of the Marina Fest bylaws be referred to the Marina Fest committee, but nobody seconded that. Does somebody want to?
I'll second.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that? Not, we'll vote on this, to send it back to the Marina Fest with our input. All in favor?
Aye.
One more time, John.
Carried.
You guys notice the date at the top of that, John and I have been working with since April. Before that.
Yeah, too slow. Page 13 and 14 on your Zoom. Consider a motion to approve Resolution 288-061714, seeking grant assistance from the Wisconsin DNR Recreational Boating Fund. Report, Mr. Administrator.
Ms. Tatzel, is part of the management goals that you all allowed staff to adopt earlier this year, has successfully authored the grant. I'm hopeful that she'll be successful in receiving funding for the grant. The one piece holding it up is this resolution. Right now, she's got everything else turned in, and DNR has agreed to allow us to submit this late as a part of it. Essentially, to receive funding from DNR from state or federal sources, you all have to authorize it through resolution. So that's what you're doing here. This would pay for up to half of the cost of the public restrooms at the Marina building. So about $12,500 worth if she's successful in receiving that funding.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I have a question about the board report. It says, if successful, the grant would lessen the financial burden on the marina and the village. If funded, the village will receive 50% of the cost.
I miswrote.
Okay, could you
Yes.
explain?
It should be the marina. All the way through, my thought process was, okay,
The marina will receive?
the marina receives.
So eliminate village.
Yes, just eliminate the
Right.
village. Technically, it will come through the village, Juliana, because DNR has to award it to the village, but it's designated for that fund.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4, consider a motion to discuss and approve ordinance 228061714, amending 62.11 of the utility code to extend deadline for grease traps to December 1st, 2015. Page 15 and 16 on your Zoom, Mr. Administrator.
You get 2014 on the thing here, you said 2015.
That is supposed to be 20.
15.
No, the deadline
The
this current
deadline
section
now.
gives us 2014. So what we're asking is for it to be extended to 2015.
2015.
This was enacted prior to my arrival here. I will tell you, there's some pushback from some of the restaurant owners about this in terms of compliance due to the cost of compliance. And I turned that over because this discussion was had a number of times prior to me to Steve Jacobson for comments on it.
A couple of things have occurred since the enactment of this ordinance that I think it makes sense to extend this to 2015. Our inspector, as he was going through this process, I'm not sure that he has completed it as of yet. So that puts a number of the businesses in the position that they have not been inspected or told, and they're going to have until December 2014 to comply. It's kind of a short notice on something that could be from up to $10,000 for a in-ground system. The other thing that has occurred is we have contracted with Robert Lee and Associates to update what is called a CMOM, which is looking at our whole collection system, how we manage it, what we have to do, what our ordinances are, to make sure that all our ordinances comply with what the state is going to be requiring. So having our ordinance reviewed, that should be done by the end of this year. So that'd be tying into. The other thing that is going on is we're looking at the solids handling portion of our treatment plant. And if we're going to be requiring the grease removal of all this material from our collection system, it seems to me we should have a spot for it out of the plant. And how do you handle that? Currently, as that grease, fats, and oils move through the plant, a certain portion of it is assimilated by the plant, bacteria and everything. A certain portion of it tends to float. We set up nets and we probably catch 99% of it. But we're trying to eliminate that from the waste load, which is going to minimize the load to suitor plant and basically lengthen your ability
extended the useful
Yeah.
space inside the plant.
So as we go through this sludge study, that's one of the things we're also asking Lean Associates to look at as to how we could handle this material, probably right straight to our digester in some mode. So I think extending this whole thing to 2015 will give us, the utility, a chance to address all those issues and give the businesses the time that they need to get meet the state code and explore what those options might be.
We put a motion on the floor?
So moved.
I'll second it.
As the utilities chair, I would like everybody to understand that this went through a tremendous amount at multiple meetings of discussion.
I was going to say, it's been around.
This has been a non-conforming, I feel, big problem for years and years and years and been not handled. There was written notice, if I'm not mistaken, not once, but at least twice, 18 months ago, that this December was going to be the deadline. The reason we chose that is that we are spending gazillions of dollars to put brand new pipes in, and we're allowing these people to put all the grease and the solids and gunk up pipes. Part of this stemmed from, we've had clogs and issues with pipes. We have to pay big money to have pipes cameraed, videoed. Now is the time to do this. The village, again, the village is bearing most of the expense to put these new pipes to these businesses. We should not allow them to throw junk in them, and between now and then, in my opinion, find some other reason to cry that they can't afford it. This needs to be done. They have been given 18 months to do it. I cannot, in good faith, extend this.
I'll play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
First of all, I don't disagree with the ordinance. I do believe we should extend it. I think there's a lot of questions that have been raised based on what business owners have approached the village on. There was a business owner that approached us a couple of weeks ago that kind of started this whole thing up, and you'd be hard pressed to prove to me that what is being required to be put in will be of any benefit based on what comes out of his restaurant right now.
Then we need to work hard and fast and not wait 14 months to bring the problem to us when you have 4 months left. Identify that problem 14 months ago, and over the last 14 months, we take care of it.
He
If
just
we
got
kick this down the
inspected
can.
2 weeks ago, Pat.
Well, then we
wasn't
need to
the
be on the
village's fault.
inspector,
That
which
wasn't-
I'm
that
pretty
wasn't
sure
his
was
fault.
one of my points, is that these people need paperwork, the inspector needs paperwork, because I specifically said, I don't want to hear that we're not going to do this in 18 months, because I brought this up before the road. When I first heard this years ago, I said, what do you mean we have restaurants dropping all of their waste into the lines? That is wrong, okay? So you can give me any reason you want, it's wrong to put waste in any state agency,
But up
environmental.
until this point in time, this particular restaurant has complied with everything that he was required to do.
Okay,
The inspector comes along and says, yes, you have 4 of the grease traps, but on your dishwasher, you don't.
okay,
And I believe the state law says you need to have one on there,
okay.
okay? There's probably nothing going through that dishwasher that's coming out with any grease. If you look at the process and what goes through, it's scraped off, it's rinsed off through other grease traps before it ever gets put in the dishwasher. And now he's gonna put in a $10,000-$15,000 trap, a 1,000 gallon trap for a dishwasher that's probably not putting anything through. So the question became, why did he just get inspected 2 weeks ago? Okay? And why is it gonna, an established business who's been in for years and years and years and years, suddenly has to have a $10,000 to $15,000 expense sprung on him, okay, before the 1st of December? And so he's questioning, what's going on, why is this all that's happening, when I don't think I'm putting anything into the sewer. I have all these other traps already in place that I bought and paid for and installed. Now there's a change, okay, and you want me to spend all this money?
He got that letter 18 months ago. And I'm pretty sure.
I have a grease trap in my place too. I didn't get the letter 18 months ago, and I didn't.
Okay. Well, you definitely should have. No, I'm not
And I had to
arguing
call
at
the
you, I'm
village
arguing
and
at
say,
somewhere
send me-
there was a breakdown then, because
So
I
I called the
specifically
village and
said
send me
we
the
need.
letter, okay, and after I got the letter, then I made arrangements to have it come and inspect it.
Okay.
And I was inspected this past winter,
Okay.
okay?
Pat, at this point, I don't have an explanation why there's been any sort of a backlog for inspections. I don't have an answer for you on that. Part of this is coming from the inspector making his way around. I've heard what it is that you've had to say about notice going out. I've made the default assumption that notice had gone out at some point in the past about this. That's just general practice to go and do that. What this does is essentially gives the village some time to go in and do it. I've had a chance to review the state building code and our local ordinance, and to Steve's point, our engineers will end up reviewing our ordinance and making recommendations on what we may need to change in there. For example, right now it specifies that any, I believe the term is outlet, that is discharging more than 100 parts per million of fats, oils, and grease is required to have an interceptor. The state code that I see doesn't indicate that. It's all based on volumes of material coming through, not specific to a concentration. It's about liquid throughput and discharging effluent. So by allowing the engineers to work for a year on this, not discounting anything you've said about notice being given and people having a public duty to be aware of what ordinance changes are enacted, being notified thereof, provides some cushion of grace period for that.
I'm really interested here. You guys are talking about have engineers work on it. We think that the CMOM, they are looking at the grease coming out of individual restaurants, and they're going to give us some
No, they're looking at
update
our
on-
ordinance, and if our ordinance meets the state standard from DNR,
Okay.
if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. For example, this dishwasher that President Lino is referring to, if the discharge limit, according to DNR standards, is somewhat higher than our ordinance, we can spec the effluent out coming from that load on some kind of an average sample basis, then maybe that precludes that individual from enacting that because there's no substantive reason to have it in there. However, if we get into it, whatever that standard would be that would cause damage to the pipes, that is in there, then he'd need to go ahead and pony up and put that money into play and put that in place.
And the engineering analysis you're referring to is the CMOM?
Yes, sir. The CMOM is examining the ordinance, and Steve actually fired off an email and copied me on it to the engineers about it. This is part of the process that goes with the operation of it.
Okay.
And when were they notified? When were
The engineers?
Yes.
As soon as we became aware of this from the restaurant owner began examining
Right,
it.
so was that 18 months ago or 2
No,
months
no.
ago? Or
No,
2
sir,
weeks
it's within this
Yeah,
month.
the CMOM we just approved within the last probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Now, they said they'd probably have it done by the end of the year, but, you know. So how do we, and we probably can't because then you can't tie the future board or whatever else. I just, you know, it's been wrong, it continues to be wrong. And somebody's gonna try to find a way to weasel out of it. You know, these things need to be done and we're just.
The one other cautionary
Kicking it
thing
down
I'd
the
lay out
road.
to you as you consider this is that you all are, and the technical term for it's an unfunded mandate. You all are applying 2 unfunded mandates probably within a 24-month period on your business community, one of which being the application of the grease traps and installation of those, the second of which being the burial of the overhead utility lines, potential rerouting of power systems inside of those buildings. So I don't know what those business owners' cash positions are like. You may, by fiat, be creating a situation where those business owners may end up out of business. I don't know what their cash flow is or what they're able to afford or not. I do know what we're going to compel them to do. The other side.
And I don't disagree it needs to be done, but based on some of the objections that have been raised, I think it needs a look-see to go, wait a minute, you know, is the ordinance driving this and it doesn't need to? Did we put too much of an ordinance in place? Yes, we need to meet state codes, but somebody who's been in business all those years suddenly comes along and is faced with this huge bill. It's like, wait a minute.
I go back to the fundamental concept that any and all restaurants across America, the United States, the world should have a grease trap.
I would
Having
tell you
had
we
a
have
business
one.
before, and you open up a grease trap, you do not want that going
Right.
into the pipes. So
And
to.
he's got grease traps in place.
Okay.
The question, Dave, is
Okay.
whether they're adequate, whether those grease traps meet state code.
The ones that were inspected met state code. He was given the pass on that. but there wasn't one on the dishwasher.
Which would make him compliant with the state code. I will tell you, we do have one problem
Can
that
you
I'm
put
aware
a
of.
pipe, you know,
No, because of the volume going through it.
He's got a
What he was
1,000 gallon
told- What he was
tank.
told by our inspector was he'd have to install a 1,000-gallon tank.
okay.
And so when we went out and priced that, it was a lot of money. We're going, wait a minute.
Our current ordinance allows for, this is some of the dichotomy in this. Our current ordinance allows for some administrative discretion on when we grant a waiver on that. The real question is this an appropriate situation to grant a waiver or not? Until the engineers evaluate this in some conformity with the DNR standards, Steve and I are reluctant, I guess I shouldn't speak for Steve, to grant, I think I'm safe in saying to grant any waiver until they've had a look at it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can I make a?
And I'm not suggesting that we grant any waivers either.
I'd like to suggest a compromise. Since it's been in place for 18 months, and in all likelihood, they're going to continue to push back to the last minute until they get forced to do it. And now as we have the CMOM, whatever that means, I have no idea, inspecting it or doing it, what if we were to extend it by 6 months? Okay, it's June of 2014. Right now, you're talking about a year and a half from now before this goes into thing. What if you were to turn around and send out a letter to all the people saying that this was your initial letter, copy it to it. Here's the second notice on this one. We are doing these inspections and we're extending you the deadline till next June, which gives you a year from now.
June 15th.
Okay, type thing. And just gives them, you know, a drop dead date instead of just saying, well, you have a year and a half again. In all likelihood, they're going to probably wait until next June before they start acting.
John, I certainly see your point. I need to ask Steve a question. Now, Steve, when's the CMOM due to be completed? Is it December this year or sometime late this year?
Correct.
So that's, I think the one preclusion there is that we won't have the data back that we need on operation of the plant until that CMOM's completed.
I'm just flabbergasted, based on the very limited amount of detail that they provided as for the, in my mind, summary details we're gonna get. This is not a detailed, correct me if I'm wrong here, Steve, this is not gonna be a detailed, we were looking for different solutions to sludge handling, not pricing, not which one's necessarily the best, just options.
That's the sludge
I
study.
know, but this has got to do with sludge.
Sure.
And I thought that's what Steve said, how we're gonna handle sludge and do we need something out there? And the CMOM is looking at what we have and we're gonna get them a lot of data, but, so you think we're gonna get specific things that say X percentage of outflow should mandate a size of a grease trap and therefore we're gonna have a better handling on how big of a grease trap a restaurant needs based upon the CMOM?
The one piece that I'm looking for is a consistent administration of a waiver process for anything that goes into place without our engineers examining our ordinance in their technical capacity and in some legal capacity in comparison with DNR's mandates. I'm not comfortable giving out any waivers. So in this situation, without having something other than a locally produced and reasonably good ordinance put together that's going to be consistently enforceable across the state due to uniform interpretation, I think we'd be remiss to not plow ahead with some kind of an extension. I do not want to discount that I'm hearing everything it is that you have to say about due notice having been delivered on these individuals. I'll be quiet now.
So
I would suggest this as a compromise. Because the restaurants that don't have anything there, they should be proceeding with their design work to get it installed. And if it makes sense to me to extend this for a year just because of how everything is unfolded, because of the ability for the inspector to get out there in time, because a lot of these restaurants are closed up all winter, you couldn't talk to them and show them or tell them. Now, once they are inspected, it's up to that restaurant owner to contact plumber, design somebody to design an approved system. That doesn't happen overnight, and then they aren't going to install that during
They're the winter months,
Summer
it snows.
season,
yeah.
fall season, it's gonna be installed this winter or early spring or something like that.
So you think a year, is that gonna encourage them to install it? Or are they gonna just wait until the next deadline, which is next year this time, and then decide, well, wait a second, I'm up against a deadline and start doing it? Then, you know, if you go from a 6-month extension from now and you give them notice, that's a year, you know, from now before they do it. That goes through all of our summer months, it goes through all of our winter close down, it goes through all of next year. And so what's the difference on your scenario, Steve, between October of next year and December when they're shut down, you know, versus having that installed by June of next year or the...
If I could point out one issue that's been brought to me by the utilities department, that's a restaurant that's in our community that currently is discharging grease without any interceptors in place. That grease ends up in our pipes, does clog things up, and as a consequence, some of our residential customers experience backup of, to politely put it, feces and other material in their lines up onto, is it the second floor of the building, Steve?
And we
No,
want
it's
to
not
give
second
them
floor.
more time to continue
To
to
Steve's
aggravate or
point,
pollute.
the individuals that have nothing in place at all.
Yeah.
you could
Well, the only,
consider some
and as much as I'm appreciative of that gesture, my concern would be is if, in fact, the engineers are gonna come back that would change the design, I don't want them to design something that then, 3 months from now, they say, we need to change, and you bear expense in changing that.
Okay.
No, maybe this seems short, but I like John's idea. Get everything done, and I want a certified signed letter from the inspector that there's no more crap-ass excuses about nobody knew. Again, it was 18 months ago, I said, make sure everybody knows this. I was the chair sitting on this thing, I said, I know exactly what's gonna happen here, folks. We're gonna get a year from now, and everybody's gonna go, whoa, 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 I can't do this now, it's high season, I don't have the money, whatever else. We gave you 18 months. Guess what, it's a year away, whoa, 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 wait, we can't do it. So
And a number of those restaurants I talked to personally, and, oh yeah, we'll take care of it, yeah.
And none of them, how many of them have?
And it's going to continue.
And none of them have.
So
So
we
you're
have
gonna
talked-
extend it a year, and a year from now, we're gonna have the same
I
discussion.
talked to one of the biggest in town, and this was I guess a follow-up to find out maybe what the other side was thinking, what were the restaurateurs thinking. And the comments that I got back were, yes, I know it has to be enacted by December, no, we know we don't have anything in place, and yes, we're planning on putting those provisions in later this fall. Right, so they knew it was there, they knew it was coming, they were taking the appropriate steps to rectify it.
So maybe it needs to be, because what brought this up was not somebody who didn't have one. It's somebody who had a couple in place and was being required to put it on an item that he hadn't been required to previously.
Yeah. Well, maybe the...
So maybe it doesn't apply to people that don't have one at all.
Is there some way that we can look, for example, I mean, because we have, I mean, the whole discussion seems to be prompted by the one that already is doing their, at least an effort towards due diligence on what they, and their responsibilities. We know that there are some big white elephants, I don't even know who they are, but you can tell because of what's happening to the neighbors on the second floor. But that's a public nuisance. I mean, maybe in addition to working on the CMOM and getting this in place for everybody, you have to identify the individual public nuisances and you take action in a different way. And I would ask the Utilities Committee to explore that. I mean, that's a public nuisance and that is a health hazard.
We could look at Donna enacting something inside the nuisance code for that, or inside the utility code to place some kind of final penalty in there, if that's what you're...
Well, I think it's worth exploring. I mean, if there's just a couple that are really outstanding and are abusing the good faith of everyone else who's trying to get things in place, why are we punishing everybody?
And guess what? Those 2 or 3 that are abusing it will continue to abuse it no matter what the deadline is.
Well, I would ask to explore it from a public nuisance point of view.
Yeah, well,
or
and
some
the
other-
idea that we're punishing anybody, we're not punishing anybody.
Well, okay, well, but it is effectively punishing the one who has 4 grease traps, and there's a question about whether they need the other one or not. I mean, that's a financial burden that they don't need to bear, and they're the ones stepping forward and taking care of things. There's somebody out there who is creating a health hazard and a public nuisance.
Okay.
And so let's address those particular things separately from, or I would ask the committee to consider doing
Well,
that.
why don't we do something along with that extension, we put some teeth in it and put some dates that they have to have inspection completed by, and application for waivers if there, if there is a need for a waiver, they, here's how many I've got into it and I have this type of thing, and so I have an application for a waiver on my dishwasher we were talking about, and have some dates that are put into that ordinance or that law saying, we have you, and you got up until, we're gonna give you a year extension, but we're giving you notice right now. Instead of December 14th, by December 2014, you have to have these inspections done, your plan in place in order to do it, type thing, waivers applied for, all that stuff put down in writing, and then the drop dead date for completion of that is gonna be June of next year. That gives you, through the summer months, I've got my off-season to, to do it and get through things, and I get, through the portion of next year, but I have a plan in place to do it.
John, to tie back in what she said, what Pat said about the large offenders and what Steve said about some of them not having anything in place, would your waiver or granting of a waiver be conditional upon there being some grease interception apparatus in place by 2014? So that what we're addressing is the ones who have nothing in place, and now at least a condition of the waiver to be considered for one is you have to have something in place.
I think you have to come up to code, and if you're.
You have to have something you're gonna base your waiver on. Why? Just because you can't put a waiver out there just because it's gonna cost you money. You have to have.
You're talking about a temporary waiver. We're talking about a deferral until 2015. Do they have to have the full system put in?
This has been going on since the first system in 1973. Whether we do it now, 6 months from now, or 1 year from now, it's not going to make that much difference. And if we can simplify the whole process by tying it all together at the same time, it'll make Zeke's job easier, my job easier, and your job easier when it comes to enforcement. Just set that date. We're going to relook at the whole ordinance to make sure that we're doing it the right way and that we have the variances, guidelines, waivers, or whatever you need the right way. Give us time to get that done. And then that gives the businesses time to have a system, an effective system put in that is cost effective for them. Don't rush it. There's too much at stake for the business, and no sense rushing us on this because we're looking at the whole thing anyway.
Okay, so if we were to grant them a year extension, there'd be no possible conceivable way anybody could give us as to why they don't have a working, inspected, verified system a year from now. Yeah, it's a yes or no answer.
No, it's not. Right now.
Then no, then I am not going with that. It stays as is. That's the problem. 1973, 1975, 1977, every time somebody like me brings it up, it's the right thing to do, and we're gonna kick the can. No way.
Right now, the way the system is working, we have the inspector for the village going to each one of these locations. They are getting a notice at the time that they have to get an approved system.
How about this? How about anybody that objects, they can propose it.
And then they're given that deadline. That gives them time to start looking. Now, granted, there's going to be some of those people that are going to put it off to the last minute, but there's a lot of people that, Fuzzy Sunster, boom, he was right on it. There's people that do address it.
So is it done? Fuzzy's done, or?
I have not been there to look at it. I know it's been designed.
I guess my thought would be, if somebody has an extenuating circumstance, we've got the grease traps in, they're doing this, engineering may come back and say they don't need them, that's fine. You give that person a variance. if they've been not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they've got no grease trap, it stands. They got till December, it needs to be in. If you're not complaining at this point, well, I'm not giving you more time because you either you're choosing not to do it. Just to roll over on everybody a year doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I agree with what you're saying, Pat. Do we have any idea how many don't have any things in place, percentage-wise? Okay.
How many restaurants retire, what, you're just talking about restaurants, right?
We're talking about restaurants and food handlers. The food handlers don't have to have.
All right, so we have 12 of them in
substantially
downtown
replaced.
Sister Bay, so what do we have in the whole village? 15?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just say you have 20.
So we have 20 of them.
And some of them have some. And again, if they've got something,
That's what I'm
fine
going, out
with
of
saying,
those,
hey, yeah,
out of those,
re-engineered, whatever else, that's fine. I'm talking about the people that have nothing.
Yeah.
And the whole point was, we're hooking up brand-new pipes, and they're starting to clog them already. Don't let them clog them. Don't let them aggravate and create a health hazard. Give them another year, I guarantee you, there'll be a reason that they want 2 years.
all right.
I agree. If there's not something in place now, I agree, keep it the way it is to get that done. But if there's something in place,
Yep.
and the inspection requires something different, that may change as a result of the CMOM and the state issue, then give them the extra year for us to figure it out and for them to figure out what they'd have to do.
So administratively, there's nothing in your ordinance that needs to change to accomplish that other than to direct Steve to grant temporary waivers, not permanent waivers, not variances, to press ahead with that. If they have something in place and they are now being requested to have something additional put in place, Steve could enact a temporary waiver for that property until we get the results of CMOM and find out what they're actually going to have in there.
I like that idea. The other question I have, where I was going, if we have 20 restaurants, you know, somebody needs to identify, out of the 20 restaurants we have, how many of them are in compliance or started the process, okay? And let's say there's 10 of them that have started that process, or, you know, in some form, you know, they've started it, okay? The other 10 haven't, okay? Then you have your inspectors, you instruct your inspector, you go to these 10 restaurants, and you have that completed by, give them a drop dead date.
August 1st.
You know, August 1st. I mean, you go to these 10 restaurants by August 1st, and they have to have notice and whatever, and a plan put into place. And then you can get them to go, you know, in 2014, at the end of 2014 is when the ordinance says that you have to be in. If that is an undue burden that falls on Steve, they could apply for the restaurant, and they're going to that, they'd apply to Steve for a variance on that drop dead date that comes before the board to find out what the date would be.
I refer it back to and you'll see this in the bylaws, a utility committee at a later date.
That's fine. I don't need to be involved in the decision. I just think you need to put some guidelines in place and hold them to it, and not punish everybody. I mean, and not, you know, the guys that are going through it, and if they have the dishwasher, like you say, that makes perfect sense to me. You need further study, let's do it. I'm not forcing you to go do something right now that may or may not need to be done. But if you're just dragging your heels and you're just not doing it, and I'm dumping all that crap down the drain, you're gonna continue dumping that crap down the drain next year at this time.
I'm getting ready to open my mouth and insert my foot as I often do, and I'm gonna ask Steve a question, and he's gonna give an answer back. That is, Steve, who's a bigger offender, your restaurants or your residents?
Restaurants or the?
Restaurants or residents? Who's putting more fat souls and grease down the drain right now when you go to your wet wells and you see what's in them?
One of our lift stations that we have the majority of the problem with is in a completely residential neighborhood.
Okay. People dumping oil down the sink and grease down the sink. And we don't require residents to put grease traps on. I'm just throwing that out as an FYI. I don't know how much public education we need to get into, but obviously there's something there.
Yeah, and there may be, you know, some bad apples, but you have to agree that the volume at which a restaurant puts out breakfast meats.
It's a point source.
A residents can't in a year's time do what Al Johnson's, that caliber of restaurant size, I don't know what they do. That caliber of restaurant though, number of meals in a week in the summer puts out in grease.
Oh,
I don't know whether they've got a
Period,
good, or a
so-
grease trap or not,
Compared to
but, you know,
residential.
you can't tell me.
It's any commercial kitchen from churches. Churches are a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay,
Yes,
so
so
I
what-
think we need a follow-up letter to everybody to remind them that the deadline is this December. So when they start squawking, then we need to assess who's in line for this. But it's not a blanket rollover 1 year. You don't have a grease trap, you need something by this December. Hold their feet to the fire.
So if I understand Zeke correctly, we would withdraw this,
Yes.
this motion, withdraw this item, because we can do what we're talking about doing under the existing code and ordinance.
Just
You're
directing
correcting me
Steve to
then
go.
when people have a problem with it, if they haven't, as long as they have something in there, that I sign a waiver
An
for
extension.
1 year.
Yeah, you're making an interpretation of your code. Your code authorizes Steve to grant a waiver. Essentially, you're telling Steve what kind of a waiver to grant. 1 year waiver.
Up to a 1 year.
Oh, yeah, up to a 1 year.
You say up to a 1 year labor, but I think you, in that motion that you're talking about, you still need to identify what restaurants are in, where are they? You know, this group has started the process, this group is halfway through the process, this group is, you know,
That's
they're
our
all.
That's all, that's what the inspectors said. We don't have to make a motion, actually, we're gonna, whoever made the motion, we're gonna withdraw it. And
Yeah,
the second
that's
needs to be
me.
withdrawn, we need a second. Okay.
Okay, so, I'm gonna say it was eventually the consensus that the existing regulation shall remain in effect, but if extenuating circumstances exist, a request for a variance can be made and the utilities director can grant a 1 year extension, is that correct?
A 1 year
Up to-
waiver.
Up to a
Up
1 year
to.
waiver.
Temporary waiver, not a variance.
Yeah,
Up to.
put up to a 1 year temporary waiver.
Yeah, we'd like them to be in earnest, working
Yeah.
toward getting this
Yeah,
done.
just saying, you got a year, I mean, you know, it
Exactly,
may
it'll
be
be
3
next year,
months,
right.
you know.
Or we may come back to that individual and say, you're right, you don't need it.
Which is fine, if they don't, yeah. I mean, if the CMOM says they don't need it.
You already have a
it's fine.
mechanism in place for that, and that's through Steve to issue a permanent waiver.
Okay, so now what do you want this to say? It was eventually the consensus that the existing regulation shall remain in effect. But if extenuating circumstances exist, then what? A request for what?
Temporary waiver.
Request for a temporary.
1 year.
Of up to.
Up to 1 year.
Okay, temporary
Well, behind me
waiver of up to 1 year may be granted by Steve.
By utilities.
Utilities.
I know you start mixing this up.
Yeah.
I just, you know,
Yeah,
just
we're
thinking the
volleying
same
back.
thing.
I was over there, they told me I had to sit over here.
What does that tell you?
Okay, so we're gonna say it was eventually the consensus that the existing regulation shall remain in effect, but if extenuating circumstances exist, a request for a temporary waiver of up to 1 year may be granted by the utilities director. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
and we need to withdraw the motion.
And then
Already done.
Donna
We did.
and Nora withdrew their motion.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on that? or the-
I wonder about the withdrawing the motion, because I thought you need a motion to discuss it, so now.
A motion was there,
It
then a motion
showed
was
in the
wrong.
minutes that the motion was there, all right.
Okay.
All right, moving right along with sadness to point number 9. I'm sorry, 8. Consider a motion to accept the resignation of Donna Scatterby from the Village of Sister Bay Board of Trustees.
It has been, it is with a great deal of sadness, actually, that I do have to resign. We're moving out of the village, at least temporarily. We've sold our home, and we'll be moving out June 30th. Consequently, I will not be a resident of Sister Bay, so I can't serve at the pleasure of the residents of Sister Bay. But it's been a real honor to serve with everyone here, to work with Zeke and the staff here. I've learned so much, and the residents are just great people, and I can't say enough about Sister Bay. And I know you will find somebody else who's terrific too, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, I'm out of here, right?
I said,
Oh,
we
yeah.
didn't,
So-
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
nobody's moved to let you leave.
So we need a motion.
She's gonna be my
second to
neighbor.
accept-
Hopefully, yeah.
To accept
yeah.
the resignation effective tonight.
I'll make a motion to get rid of her.
And I'll second that,
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to go over to that side.
Thank you, Donna. We appreciate it.
Any other discussion?
Well,
No, seriously.
it has been.
Thank you, Don.
It's been fun.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, it has been. Okay,
All in favor?
Aye.
all right,
Opposed?
wait till you.
Sorry.
vote. Yeah, you have to change the laws.
You're
to
certainly
do that.
welcome to stick around.
I will, but I'll just. step over.
Okay, obviously, we were aware that this was going to take place for some period of time. And it is my prerogative as village president to nominate somebody to fill that position. As you're aware, Shane Solomon chose not to run for reelection this year due to personal circumstances. Those personal circumstances have changed somewhat. So I offer, and he's agreed to it if we agree to nominate him, accept the nomination. So I am nominating Shane Solomon to fill the vacant term of the, from Donna's candidate's term, the unexpired term.
I'll second that.
Was that a motion? He's nominating.
No.
Someone needs a
You
motion
second
out
the
there on the
nomination,
floor.
right.
Okay.
So you're making the motion, Scott?
I will make the motion. We
Confirm.
temporary, yeah, confirm Shane Solomon for Donna's vacancy.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
That's why you're.
Aye.
Aye. That's why you're leaving.
No,
that
now where is he gonna sit?
No one's gonna keep him in check.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Okay, we needed that housekeeping taken care of before we could move to the appointments.
Can I vote for him?
Okay.
Okay.
Consider a motion to confirm and appoint President Reno's nomination for qualified citizen to fill Donovan's category C. Did that.
Yes.
Item number 10, consider a motion to discuss and amend the Village of Sister Bay's Board of Trustees bylaws. Should be page 53.
This is items 10 and 11, they're both related, if we could consider both of them at the same time in the same motion as tandem documents, because they're interrelated.
Okay.
If you all would entertain that when you make the motion after I'm done with my report. Essentially, your documents are going to stay static with the exception of whatever you may discuss with regard to a marina committee change, as we discussed earlier. We've had a situation in existence in the village for some time where we've had our utility committee members deciding and acting upon, making recommendations upon utility plant issues, as well as utility water, wastewater collection. You not here? Sorry. Is it? Okay. Is that better? Okay. Our utility committee members have been in tandem with Town of Liberty Grove representatives making decisions about the village's water, wastewater collection systems. And based on the situation in existence with the wastewater plant, in discussion with the chairman of that committee, Mr. Duffy, and the village president here, as well as Steve Jacobson, we felt it pertinent to introduce another committee. That would be a water and wastewater committee. However, on further consideration from an administrative standpoint in dealing with the Bay Shore project, Steve Jacobson has been absolutely instrumental in evaluating storm sewer issues, so he seems to be the staff person with the capability and expertise to deal with stormwater flows. He's the go-to when citizens have a problem. It would make sense to roll that into a general utility committee that is dealing with those issues. And so I've presented it as such and hope you all will consider approving it.
I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
Okay. Anything on Marina Fest?
I have some comments on the Marina Fest Committee.
Okay.
I think the Marina
Fest Committee cannot include the nonprofits. I think it has to be the.
I was going to do the motion and have the discussion. He finished his report.
Okay.
And we're going to talk and make our changes.
Okay.
So I have a motion and a second.
Second.
Go ahead, John.
So who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay.
I think the Marina Fest Committee should be one trustee, one member of Parks Committee, a member of the Marina Committee, and ex officio Marina Manager. I think you need to strike the non-voting members or nonprofit organization, one person from each nonprofit. You're going to have 15 people on a committee, you know, type thing. I'm trying to, you'd never get anything done because half of them won't show up.
Right, I agree, and
Type thing.
if you look later into the appointments, that's exactly, what you said is exactly how
Right.
it's set up for the appointments.
Right,
So,
but it's in the
Yes.
bylaws
Yeah, it
here,
needs to be changed.
saying that, you need
Right.
to change, take those people off.
yeah, I agree.
This is on page 56.
Yes.
It's under the Marina Fest, not to be confused with Marina Committee, Marina
Right.
Fest Committee.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about was the, what are we calling it?
The Water, Wastewater, and Storm Sewer Committee.
Yes. Up till now, it's been under Parks.
Storm Sewer.
Storm Sewer has been under Parks, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
I didn't know where to take it when I got here. You guys had Parks, Properties, and Streets, and you had Utilities, and I went, well, let's see, Storm Sewers run under Streets, so it must go there.
Don't go thinking.
And whenever there was an issue with the storm sewer, it went
To Utilities.
Parks is dumping all of our grease to utilities.
So it's our Parks' final way of getting the final grease over to the
We're gonna grease the skids.
I plugged in a membership makeup here just to have a placeholder. You all may consider changing that in some fashion.
What I was suggesting on the appointment schedule was that it be the same people on the utility committee, would be the same people on the, what's the name of that committee again? I can't remember the name.
Water, Wastewater, and Storm Sewer Committee. The proposition
How
that
about
Steve.
utility 1A or something?
Well, to not confuse everybody and not to have double, you technically will have a double meeting, but what we would do is have our plant utility meeting and then adjourn that, turn right around and have this meeting on the same date, so the same committee showing up and same date, time, same place. You just have two notices going out in two packets.
Does that make sense to you guys in utilities?
Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so do you want to do?
Based on the amendments that we made to it.
You want to make your motion as amended?
Yep.
So then you're going to amend your motion.
Just-
As you made the motion to accept it first. So now you have to amend your motion.
Hold on before you amend. 'Cause I've got one for you, sorry.
Go ahead.
You said the same as the Utilities Committee. It needs to be amended to say from Sister Bay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Sister Bay half.
Well,
Yeah.
right, again, in the appointments, it's
Yep.
clarified there.
Got it.
So we will be meeting.
Well, my
So
suggestion,
my
Then we will
suggestion was
step
I
in.
made the motion and got a second, we had a discussion, and we approved the motion subject to the amendments that were made on the floor.
Quarterly or as needed.
So you're just going to be stating that the village board accepts the proposed changes to the village of Sister Bay Board of Trustee and Committee and Commission bylaws as amended at this meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Administrator, Utilities Director, and Parks Director as ex officio members. Okay.
Item number 12, consider a motion to act on a recommendation of the Parks Committee to approve a contract amendment with JGR for rebidding the beach contract.
All right, so Parks Committee reviewed this document. I've gone in a good bit of detail with the board report. I hope you all had a chance to examine that. The fiscal impact at this point that I presented it was $13,640. I told the Parks Committee that I'd go back and attempt to negotiate this with JJR, given the situation with JJR. I was successful in receiving a $2,000 reduction in this from what was originally presented. And there will be a subsequent modification reflecting that. Also, in memory of Mr. Clove, every contract that I get us into from now on, I will make an earnest attempt to have them state a not to exceed sum. So even though this one doesn't show that, that's what'll be there. They'll make that amendment.
So this is, JDR gave us a design, we gave them a budget, the bid came in double. We're having to rework the bid, and we're being charged $11,000 to rework a bid that the bid came in double what their estimate was.
Correct.
Why do we have to pay a red cent?
That's a really good question, Pat. And the best answer that I can give you is that, because that's just the way it is. You don't have a lot of recourse in this. Their best efforts as engineers apply on a statewide scale. You all are in a locality that has some fairly specific conditions unanticipated by the engineers, nor anticipated by you all when you were working with the engineers on producing those bid documents. As a consequence, your project came in vastly over what it was anticipated to be.
Based on what they told us it would probably be.
Sure, and I did go back and speak with another engineering firm, just in case you all wanted an alternative to this. I've lined up a backup engineering firm who would administer the bid process. It would cost us roughly the same sum of money to have that other engineering firm bid this out and handle the bid documents. However, this engineering firm, they're our village engineering firm, they work with us all the time, it's Robert A. Lee and Associates. They do not have the expertise to administer this contract, so we would be on our own for administration, which consequently is also what JJR was proposing on the initial contract amendment, that we be on our own for administration. That is not what I'm comfortable doing. I'm not an engineer, nor, to my knowledge, is anybody but Dave really done any sort of engineering work in the past.
I'm sorry, so what you're saying is the JJR is also saying they wouldn't do that?
No, in a previous, when we started going through these different iterations of how this may flesh out and what do we need to do, we began with a conversation on pulling things out of the project or amending things inside of the project to reduce the overall cost, and we think we're going to get it down by about $100,000 from the previous bid. JJR proposed, look, we'll split this up into 3 different bid packages, one for the beach and all the soil work to be done there, one for the concrete work, and then one for the landscaping work that would take place. When I went back and started crunching numbers, I found that this doesn't make any sense at all. We're unlikely to receive substantiative cost savings by doing that, and we're going to have the guaranteed loss of the sum of money that we would pay JJR to break these things out in 3 different bid packages. Subsequent to that, I went back to JJR and I said, this doesn't make any sense for us to do this.
So they screwed up the first time, they're recommending another screw up, and we still want to use them.
No, we don't want to use them.
Pat,
made that
I'd say where we are is you dance with the one that brung you. They're the ones that do the engineering. You're already in bed with them,
Find
Pat.
another girl to dance with.
Well, maybe the girl doesn't want to dance with you.
Yeah.
There's other girls that don't want to dance.
This is a bad thing.
I can tell you, JJR, from my conversation with them, JJR is not incredibly happy with this either. When I talked to the other engineering firm, my first comment to them, I said, what happens when you guys go to produce a project, you bid it out, and the engineering estimate comes, or the actual estimates, bids, come in double what your estimates were? And I could hear it in his voice. He was like, well, imagine your worst nightmare on the job. That's what it is, because we have no recourse to that. There's no way for us to go back and fix what's done, and we've already exhausted all of the labor and resources that are there. We've done everything that we know to do, and some other external factor is what caused that to be that way, because we've used the best methodologies that we know how to use. And I said, okay, well, how do you clean it up? And his recommendation was cleaning it up the exact way that we're cleaning it up now, which is essentially to try to mitigate the cost to us in some kind of a fair fashion. That's what I attempted to do by renegotiating it. If you look at it, there's 3 sections to this. Construction documents, updates, we are going to make some changes for cost-saving reasons. I feel that that's a fair sum to pay them to go back and amend these items. Number 2, bid award, that's about what it costs to bid these things out. The expense column, by the way, when we did the corp and the grant, they didn't even touch the expenses, which is one added benefit to Mr. Clove's assertion that we should be using the time and expense model as opposed to a lump sum model, because that's $1,200 that we potentially won't even spend, depending on what they do. The additional cost due to extension, they've had to go back and work with us substantially on this. And something that just got handed to me today is they're going to have to go back and work with DNR a little bit. I don't want to get into it. However, they're going to earn that money, or at least it appears they're going to be earning that money. And they've reduced that amount by $2,000.
What's the
What
downs?
happens to the, I'm sorry.
That's right, go ahead.
What happens to the 8,000 plus bill?
I have not resolved that.
That's not resolved.
No.
See, they have billed
Outstanding
us
bill.
$8,066
Yeah.
or something like that for work right after the first, or soon after the first bid came in so high. And we declined to pay that, but
Bob
it's
wrote a
still on
letter.
the table or somewhere.
And I've discussed it with them, and I've explained to them that I'm not paying it until we're able to resolve all the issues of the project. I think it would be a sound decision to continue not to pay that and use that simply as retained amount for the time being until this project's completed.
But
It's for the same project, though.
but
Yes.
this 11,640 could be in addition to that.
Yes,
Yes.
but that's a sum for work that they've
They've already-
already completed, although arguably in a not,
Professional manner.
I'll take that term.
Well, we had not asked them to do that work, right? We had not yet.
We had asked them to do that work.
We
That was
had
part of the
asked.
original bid, and when the bid came back, essentially double what the engineer's estimates were, that's when, I believe it was this body instructed me at the time, as well as Bob, to not pay that bill.
Correct.
I think you all
I think-
know how I feel about JJR and their performance type thing. However, and I agree with you 100%, Patrick. However, I don't think we have any recourse.
No.
I think that, we're $100,000 into it with them.
Right.
And to try to change that horse now, if we're gonna get this project to go through, unfortunately, we're forced to do this. So I'd say that, my recommendation is we do it, but we have some very, very serious thoughts on the next project that comes up about ever contacting.
Sure. I will tell you all, for a long time, and those of you that have been standing around when I happen to have been around Bob in the first couple of months of me being here, I was, I guess, in awe would be the words that I'd choose to describe how much he was able to accomplish given the limited staff that he had. And it took me some time to figure out how he was able to do that. It was on reviewing your books that I found, he used outside contractors to accomplish the work that staff generally would have done, that I'd assumed he had taken on himself, and to some degree he had, substantially. JJR enabled you all to get to where it is that you are now in the planning process and construction process. I'm not saying there haven't been some balls dropped along the way, because there certainly have been, and this beach project has been one of them. So to echo your sentiments,
I guess the question I would have is, let's say that we go ahead with this, they rework it, the bid comes in significantly more than their revised projection is. Are we going ahead with, I'm hoping we are going ahead with the beach project, but if for some reason, every now and again you hear this, we're running out of money, what are we gonna do?
You are.
If there's any thought of not doing the beach project, now would be the time to voice it. Maybe we should have a budget. It needs to be X, and if they're not very, very, very comfortable knowing it's gonna be this, there's no sense spending another 12 grand if you're not gonna do it or be disappointed
Sure.
again.
Here are your points of recourse as we move along with this project. This, of course, is one of them, and you could cut it off and not exhaust this money. They will have exhausted $11,640 to get us to the point that we're going to bid. And there's some money in retainer for administration. I don't recall the sum. It seems like it's close to $18,000. Do not hold me to that. We will bid this project out. We'll receive bids back. Hopefully, we'll get good competitive bids that'll be market-based. We will, at that time, still have some grants hanging out in the wind. Assuming that the project comes in, let's just say that it's bid at the exact same amount that was done in the future. We've already discussed holding an award letter to the contractor until we've received notice of funding or not notice of funding from those granting agencies. You all have already authorized the expenditure, and it's money that's already out the door for $4,000 for JJR to author a grant that was successfully authored and submitted to DNR for 3 different grants that were part of a grant package application. I authored one independently to WEDC. We still don't have notice back on it, and that's a $250,000 grant. Your one to DNR was an $800,000 grant. So potentially you've got somewhere between $250,000 and about $1 million hanging out in the wind. And WEDC has asked if we would accept a reduced amount. And I said, fantastic, write me a check for whatever you want to write me a check for. We'll take whatever you give us. If we are unsuccessful in receiving grant funding, you all have already authorized me, and as part of a grant process, I had to receive a bank commitment letter of financing for the difference between what you had funded or had anticipated funding and the potential amount for the contract award. So you all have, at a prior board meeting, already authorized us to go ahead through a loan process, payback over 5 years. You could always rescind that, but you've already made that decision as a policy. You all don't revisit decisions once they're made.
So
Okay.
if it came back beyond what we want to spend, you can still say no.
I'm hoping we wouldn't. That's my whole point, though, is that I don't,
Right.
to me,
Sure.
it doesn't make a lot of sense to go ahead and do this if that might be the case. So to me, I would want to know that they feel, especially with the egg, hopefully they feel on their face,
Sure.
that they feel real confident that this reworking is going to be close.
Well, they don't.
I can tell you a couple of things we did to try and poke them. We went to the county, to Soil and Water, and went through a number of things with Bill Schuster and the people down there for them to give us, that we went back and poked JJR with, okay? JJR didn't like it.
No.
They didn't like it at all, okay? But as a result, and Zeke's, we're probably looking at 100,000 plus reduction at least, based on some of the comments and things that were made.
Sure.
We're expecting maybe a little bit more. So, we've been really sticking them in the ribs about, come on.
The
Here's what
items
other
that
people
are-
are saying, here's this, here's these alternatives. And so, there's nothing wrong with Zeke telling them, look, we need to be in at this number.
And they're shooting for that.
They're shooting for that.
And there's no way to do this as we will pay you the 11.6 if and when the bid comes in within 10% variance of the, they don't do that.
I think-
No
I can tell you
consulting
where-
engineer's gonna do that because they don't control the vendors that give the bids.
Pat, where I think they are with it is they're ready to walk away from the project. That's my gut reaction from dealing
Great,
with
take
them.
$100,000, screw it up and walk away. Excellent. I like them even more.
This is one that they've spent tons and tons and tons of hours on.
I hope so for
Yeah.
$100,000.
Yeah. Of course, I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot making the comment. They set a margin, and that's what they expect to achieve. They have not achieved that on this project. I don't know what their profit margin is after they're done paying for labor, but I would imagine if they're not at cost, they're somewhere close. I talked to Dave Walnut
Got lots
weekly.
of tears for them. But,
Sure.
Was this the bunch that financed our boat ride in December?
Yeah, it is. That was
Well-
another $20,000 went to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you feel comfortable that we won't have to pay more than this, and we're gonna get a result that we will be able to move forward with to execute the project.
The caveats that I can see at this point, and Pat's getting ready to explode when I make that statement, but I can see the steam coming out of his ears. I ran into this with Donahue, and of course, you all know, I'm not an incredibly tenured administrator. I try my hardest for you, but right now I'm the second youngest administrator in the state of Wisconsin. So these big projects that you're working on, I've not had an opportunity to work on them in other municipalities. And in many ways, you're pushing the envelope on some of the projects that you're doing for the size municipality that you are. Donahue came back to us and said, look, you all have burnt through the sum of money that you should have paid us. We need an additional appropriation to complete the work on the project, largely due to weather. One of the conversations that I've had with JJR about the reasons why the bids came back as they did was because we were so incredibly time compressed and focused on our business community and not creating any disruptions during the construction process. What I've learned in doing the pavilion project is that people don't seem to mind it so much. They don't really mind the construction going on as long as it's not on the highway. And I think they're so tickled to death to have two-way streets and paved roadways that a bit of park space being torn up is really this minor eyesore compared to the drastic inconvenience they experienced this past winter. So by extending the timeline out that a contractor is able to do the work gives them some guarantee that they're going to be able to get the work completed without being penalized due to not meeting a deadline, which Dorner ran into, and we agreed to work with them on that based on weather conditions. So when we do this bid out,
One
we'll
of the things
expand
JJ
it.
was saying was the construction season was too compressed for what we wanted to get done last fall. As a result, vendors and bidders put in higher dollar amounts to cover their butts.
They did.
If they ran into
One of
something
the
else.
biggest items that came in was sand production. And I remember standing there with the contractors, them asking questions of the sand production company that came and spoke. The sand production company said, given the temperatures that we're at now, we don't know if we're going to be able to produce the volume of sand that you're looking for because the spec sand that you have is going to be so incredibly costly for us to produce. The way that they do this is they dig sand out here somewhere locally, and they have to run it through several washings and screenings to get the particle size separated that'll need to go into our beach project. When we met with Soil and Water said, why don't you just use straight sand? That's what we're doing everywhere else. And I think it was about a quarter of the cost to do that.
Okay, you're gonna wash the sand to put it in the water.
Yes, you are. However, here's the thing.
But the problem is, there's a problem with it.
What you paid for when you paid JJR was incredibly complex algorithms and wave modeling for them to take a look at that sand particle, have it float up, and then drop back down based on the density of the sand, the density of the water, and the wave action.
Okay.
So all of that taking place, you're gonna pay a lot of money for it. If you don't, what you're gonna end up with, right, is the yacht club saying, you dumped sand in my harbor.
And we're gonna be dredging the yacht.
And we're gonna be dredging yacht club year after year, keeping dumping sand in there until you guys figure out.
You're gonna have a groin.
That's not gonna stop fine particles from moving over.
It's-
That's
all
why it has to be that
engineering is
spec.
based on a particle size of sand
Yeah.
you put on the beach.
Gotcha.
So when that sand company looked at it, they said, look, if we had more time to do this and we potentially could create a stockpile throughout the year, we could go ahead and move forward. One thing we may want to look at is a direct buy of the sand, and I'll be working with JJR on this, to go ahead and get the sand company on that, the actual production of it. That would mean that part's ineligible for grant funding, but it would also mean that, hey, contractors, you got the sand sitting in a pile here. You don't have that to worry about. It's a done deal.
And that was also something that Soil and Water had suggested.
Okay.
And they also suggested perhaps we could buy with them, because they're making some huge
As a bulk.
buys
Yeah.
for sand projects that they got going
And
on.
it just is a egg in your face thing, if you want to talk about that. I didn't know this, and I don't think Dave knew this, based on his reaction at the time. Apparently, do I need to? Yeah,
If you
I'm
want,
going
go
to.
ahead.
All right. Apparently, Sister Bay, this body at some point in the not that distant past, as part of the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, some funding was handed off to, I believe it was EPA, and that got handed down to DNR. Don't quote me on the EPA part. But it was a grant that has paid for 100% of the other beaches that have
In Door County.
been being installed in Door County. You all opted out of that because you wanted a pedestrian-friendly beach with a high level of amenities and seating and all those things. I don't know when that came about, but you declined it. You didn't.
And I don't know that we declined it as being presented that way.
I don't know.
Because I don't think anybody sitting here was aware that we declined
No,
the
it was
potential
never on the
award.
board, and
Right,
I've been here for quite a while.
right.
Great.
The other thing.
We were told that by Soil and Water.
I was looking for grant money from Soil and Water, and Soil and Water said, we don't really have anything, because this was the pot of money that we got, and you guys didn't get in on it.
The only other question I have, and because I think this bid's still gonna come in at $1.3 it's gonna be way over the 800,000
Sure.
we were looking at.
I think
So
that's safe.
Be prepared when it does come back in, instead of $1.4 million, it's gonna be $1.3 million.
Well, $1.3 million is what we're looking at. That's what the grants are based on, that's what projections are based on.
Right.
Okay, we took what happened, knowing what it was, tried to winnow it down,
Yeah.
and you're at the 1.2, 1.3 range.
We
So
submitted
the
it-
expectation is that's where it's gonna come in.
We submitted it at 1.411.
Right.
For the grants.
My question is that I still can't get in my mind, when I sit there at the boathouse and look down that beach, or our swim pier, and look down that beach, all I see is probably hundreds of riprap, big rock sitting there on that beach that's there. Why is it we're spending so much money to replace that rock?
You're
with
not.
This
You're
other?
not.
You're using that rock.
We're using all of it? Because
You-
I thought you had something in that bid for all this 500-year life
That
rock
got,
that
all right,
you had.
that got taken out. One of the, and I haven't talked about that previously, one of the things that was in the original contract was a Army Corps of Engineers certified stone out of an Army Corps of Engineers certified quarry. We looked at a quarry that's down in Sturgeon Bay, and basically what you're talking about is rock quality. What are the sizes of fissures in the rock? How long is that rock likely to last through freeze-thaw cycles? Using that Army Corps certified stone, spec stone, it's like a 500-year life cycle on that stone and the freeze thaws that you all have here on average. We can get the same general quality of stone out of this quarry near Sturgeon Bay and pay a reduced price on that. I believe it was close to $35,000 by just switching from the certified stone that's gonna have to be trucked in from a greater distance to this close to core quality stone. We're doing that. One other major
And
cost
every time
savings.
there's a little change like this too, you also have to run it past the DNR and make sure it fits the permit.
Right.
Well, all of our riprap that we have up there right now is gonna be used.
Yes.
And how much more are we gonna need in addition to that? Because that's going the entire length of
Yeah.
the beach, and I thought we were gonna put grass berm type thing going down.
You do have rainwater gardens on there, as part of the DNR permit process. What you've got is some, I'm gonna use the term dimensional stone, it's meant to be a squared off stone to create some seating areas, recessing back from the beach line up that little bit of a hill. That is coming from, one, off of what you already have in place, and then two, what's located out of the wastewater plant. The contractors, we actually took a trip out there, had them look at that and give a rough estimate of the quantity. You know, we think we're gonna be able to use this and fill in what we have there. There is some stone that's gonna have to be brought in for the groin that's put out. And that was, again, based on the modeling that had been come up with and on DNR's permit.
Okay, so the loan funding you have available will satisfy, even if it does come back at 1.3, 1.4?
We would hope so, yes.
That plus what is allocated for
Yeah,
the
the
finance.
1.4 was what I based it on. If I screwed something up, I'll apologize to you later, but I believe it was 650,000 with 1.94%. Is that your recollection, Juliana? The 650, I'm 99.999% sure it's 1.94.
One was for 950.
That's the overhead utility.
Oh, right, okay.
Beach is
Yes.
650, yeah.
650.
Okay. 5-year note. Bay Lake.
Okay.
I need a motion.
Make a motion that we approve reluctantly.
Reluctantly?
The JJ
Reluctantly, I'll
Smith.
Is there a reluctant
JJR.
second? Let's hold a reluctant vote. All in favor? Aye.
I
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
hope we don't have this discussion again.
Me neither.
Not with that name on top of it.
Just get ready, I'm gonna get John fired up in a
All
minute.
right, consider a
Just
motion
hang
to
on.
discuss and confirm President Leto's committee appointments. What I would like to do is, somebody make a motion, please.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to go down this list, because there are a couple of changes and a couple of additions to it. We'll go down committee by committee, and I'll give you the changes, okay? Administrative, no change. Bay Shore Oversight, no change. DCECD, no change. Marina, we're gonna leave the vacant for a while. John and I have discussed this, but soon there'll be somebody. Under Marina Fest, vacant Parks Rep. Shane Solomon for Marina Rep. John Clove is the trustee rep, and would add Wendy Tatzel as ex officio. Economic Development remains as it is. Finance as it is. Fire Board as it is. Fire District as it is. Top of the second column, Historical Society, as it is, library commission, same, parks the same, personnel the same, plan commission the same. We do have one vacancy. That's gonna be filled by, I have Shane Solomon up on top. The other vacancy, I'll say the name, but it's not an appointment yet until he agrees to it. But Mike Termini, that is on the zoning board of appeals, is very interested in getting on the plan commission. Okay. So we haven't got that quite finished out yet, but he may end up there at that vacant spot.
He would need to come off zoning board of appeals if that occurs.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. SBAA, Shane is currently there. We need to put a question mark. Okay. There's discussion going on between Shane, there will be discussion going on between Nora, myself, and Shane. Nora is currently on the board of directors on SBAA. If she were to take the SBA appointment here, she would have to remove herself from board of directors of SBAA, or vice versa. So we want to have that discussion with Shane, Nora, and myself about how we're going to handle that. Okay? Communication and tech will remain as it is, one vacancy. Tourism zone the same, teen center currently the same. Utilities, same people in utilities will become the,
Water, wastewater collection and storm sewer committee.
it's like water.
We're gonna put
The Wawa committee.
The Wawa, there we go, the Wawa.
I like that Wawa.
That's what we call it.
Committee.
Okay, be a Wawa. Will be the same as utility. Scenic byway is the same, zoning board of appeals, as noticed, there may be a change there, we may have another vacancy, depending on what happens to plan. Administrative benefits oversight committee, citizen member, I have asked Joanne Clove to consider filling that position. She has agreed to, so it'll be Joanne Clove filled in there. Waterfront oversight committee, I'm going to give you a name. I'd like you to tentatively approve it upon her final acceptance. Jessica, I've asked Jessica Grassi to become involved with that. She has tentatively agreed to, but she wanted to just check with a couple other people first. Okay? I told her we would go ahead and make it a tentative approval. If she came back and said, no, she couldn't do it, then we'll have a vacancy. If she says she can do it, we're all set to move ahead.
You mark that on there.
And she would be the SBAA representative on the committee. And that's it. Questions? Criticisms? Rock throwing? Reluctance?
None of the above?
Yep.
Everybody's happy
Yep.
Happy.
with where you're at?
You might make one comment to the citizens in the back, and if they're interested in serving, they could see me and put their names forward for consideration.
Did he speak up loud enough that you could hear that?
He's gonna say it
He's saying
again.
yes, she's saying no.
Yeah, if you're interested in serving, drop by the office and I'll get your information onto him for consideration.
Okay, so now who made that motion?
Resident.
Yes.
Unless you're an architect or have something with plan commission background. Okay, what was your question?
Okay, I've got Scott made the motion and who seconded it?
No, I think Scott.
I think Pat seconded it.
Yes.
Sure.
Thought it was
You're
you
right.
For a minute.
No, I
Thought it was you.
no, I couldn't.
Okay, so Duffy seconded it. Baker, and now you're gonna have to amend your motion, right? Because you've made the changes?
No. No.
Because they made the motion to accept it.
Great.
As
presented.
As he's presenting
We
it.
made changes,
So now you
so,
have to amend your motion.
No.
as
No.
amended, right?
no, no. We do this all the time. We make changes to what a resolution or something is, and it is approved based on the amendments that were made from the floor. You don't have to make amendment for every little change.
The motion we made was to discuss it.
Right.
We're not making a motion to approve it, we're making a motion to discuss it. So now you just fill out the
So,
motion.
so we're going to make it, we're going to approve it based on the amendments that were made.
Oh, whatever. I don't understand what you're saying.
I think Janelle's, based on what we said, I think she's technically correct, but it'll work.
Too long.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
We're getting punchy.
Okay, so,
We've been here for 4.5 hours.
okay, so that it's as presented and amended, then, right?
Yes, correct, there you
That
go.
sounds very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. County, report on county activities from County Supervisor Dave Lino. None to report, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll go with you. Item 15, review of financial statements, consideration of motion to approve the monthly bills. I'll make a motion to approve the monthly bills as presented, subject to any amendments or discussion to follow.
Beautiful.
Juliana?
Julia?
Can we begin by cleaning up what happened last month when we didn't have exact amounts?
Sure.
And I gave you a board report. The recommendation is that you approve $37,176.87 in payroll costs from the May meeting, and $19,680.10 in expenditures, for which totals were unavailable at the May board meeting, because I didn't have that full report prepared. So those are the two amounts that you did not yet approve for that, at that board meeting. You did approve $174,020.26. So these are in addition.
In addition to, has been, okay.
I move that we approve the addition.
Any other changes to what's here?
Two.
No, I understand that, but to the
Any-
report that you have here, is there any changes to
For
this?
June, for
Yes.
this meeting?
Yes.
The $864,927.89. No, that should be a good number.
I do have some commentary on
Any
it.
questions or discussion?
Yeah, discussion on are we talking about the individual invoices now?
Sure.
On page 81, which is village, page 81 on your Zoom, and it's page 5 of the village, Jerry's Flowers. for the
Yes.
Post office for 1,000 and Hendrickson Park for 1,383.
Yes, sir.
It's an
You-
awful lot of money for, and I know they're telling our guy how to plant them, but boy, that's pretty
Well-
spendy flowers.
Here's my thought. You guys were spending 16,000 on this a year. I've got you down to about $4,000 a year. We're not where we're gonna be,
Not
John.
done yet.
We're not where we're gonna be, and not where I want to be, but this was the next step, given the talent that we had in-house, and we're able to significantly control costs doing that. What we ended up with is, this came out of finance and out of parks. Steve Mann made some requests for some additional labor. We went in and retooled these things, based on the contract, so Steve would have that, and there'd be some cost reduction associated with it.
I know that, but that's still not.
I know.
But I understand what you're doing
Sure.
and how much you've saved me already. I'm just saying that
You need to save some more.
$1,000 for those flowers in front of the post office.
I don't disagree with you.
$1,300 is an awful lot of flowers.
Yeah.
You know, or, I mean, the price per flower has gotta be $30 or $40.
One thing that I've had some
Or more.
conversation with about the staff
Wait,
member.
wait. We didn't buy $1,000 worth of flowers and put them in just those 3 spots.
No, that's
It's
a
not
rough,
possible.
that's a rough allocation on where they went.
Well, it says flowers, post office plantings.
Yes.
1,098.
I got a phone call.
I know, that's what it says.
Yeah.
We didn't spend $1,000 on the 13 flats that were put in there.
You
need to look a little bit deeper at the allocation, how it's spread around.
Yeah.
You can't spend $1,000 at Jerry's Flowers to buy the flowers that went in there.
I
So it's
believe,
been
Are you saying I'd have to spend more?
No.
Well, then Hendrickson Park's for another 1,300.
Well, does that include the labor, is what you're saying?
No.
No, that's how we did the labor.
no, again, I got a call, the Hendrickson part was Hendrickson Park, the flower bed out front, the, position out by the restrooms, and then back behind it. When I got to the point that I heard the number, I balked, but at that point, I was so late in the game, I was reticent to do anything else other than pull the trigger, largely because if I didn't pull the trigger, I'd be hearing the exact opposite, which is, why don't we have flowers in the park? And that seemed to be the more immediate concern. I think we're spending too much money there. but I also think that we're getting some expertise on planning and care that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, and we didn't have in-house on staff that Breidenhagen was charging you $16,000 for.
I understand what Brian Hagan is, I'm
Sure.
just trying to go further. I'm just
We
saying-
need to take it a step further,
So we went
which is,
16 down to 4, we're gonna go more. Okay.
Yeah. John, where I'd like to go with
That being
this-
said, I also think the post office hasn't looked this good in the last 5 years.
And we've gotten a lot of compliments.
you got a very dense planning up there that you didn't have last time I visited your community. Where I would like to go with this is to look at getting some kind of a small greenhouse to affix to the Parks building or out at our community garden site so that we can start these indoors at the Parks building. It costs relatively next to nothing to do starts. I don't know if we want to get into that, but it's something
No,
I'll
we
bring
don't.
up to Parks later.
I'm sorry, we don't.
Okay.
Been
Yeah.
there, done that, I've
I
had
mean,
a
that-
greenhouse, no, you
yeah.
don't wanna do that.
Okay.
A
Well,
commercial
you
greenhouse.
build the roses.
You
It
can-
might mean, you know, I mean, I'm all for local,
Sure.
I'd love to do it, but if I'm paying $1,000 for
Sure.
those flowers, I'll go to Home Depot and
Sure.
buy a flat.
I was in Walmart the other day, and I looked at them at Walmart, you know, price per flat. You know, Walmart doesn't tell me how to come out and plan them. Walmart doesn't do planograms for me.
Yeah,
And
that
and
does
one
help.
other thing, I will tell you, Walmart doesn't send somebody out to dig alongside your staff, and that's what Jerry's has done, is they sent somebody out physically that probably planted a quarter or more of those flowers that you see out there, at least in Hendrickson Park. I was there and watched. So you got some labor out of it.
And some training.
Well, thank you for the savings.
Yes.
I'm trying, guys.
And say more to come.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
What else?
That's it?
That's it?
Sweet.
You're complaining about $1,000 in flowers, what about the $379,000 for Dorner?
Well, I'm gonna,
We can make a motion for John to go plant those flowers next year.
hey, volunteer.
He's on parks, it'd be great training.
Yeah. He goes out there with them next year.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Well, I can point something out.
Okay.
On this summary page
Is that June?
for
Yes.
June.
Okay.
You see under debt service, this is the, one of two payments we make every year on the 2005 bonds. And you'll see that there's 0 for the marina. If I'd like to notice that,
How did that happen?
because we finished with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Don't worry, it'll be back on there next month.
I would,
Not for a while, yeah.
would like to call your attention to the amount of money that we're gonna be paying Dorner, and I've not gotten a final bill until, let's see, I got it on my birthday, June 12th. So we have had some give and take, Steve Jacobson and I, and Donahue and Associates on a final sum of money to approve for Dorner. I'm gonna start out with what are going to sound like incredibly large numbers, so go ahead and brace yourself, John Clove. Dorner came back and asked us for an additional $96,000 above the original contract sum. Keep in mind, there's some fairly good explanation behind this. Donahue countered on that based on some of the quantities inside of the project that Dorner should have been responsible for as a result of them doing work, not protecting services, not doing one thing or doing something else. So Donahue's counter back to Dorner was an $84,000 increase over the original contract sum. So what makes up that $84,000? The first and largest piece of that is an individual item. Under the sewer and water related items was $33,289 for changing the location of Matt Meyer's outfall. And that's commonly what we refer to it as, but it was based on his request. The other ones that came up that are larger.
Wait.
But he paid for
Right,
that.
stick with that for a while.
Yeah, okay.
So, all right.
But that,
He gave us how much in escrow?
30.
Well, 27 for the construction work and then 3,000 for trees. We're gonna, Juliana and I actually had a conversation earlier about this and digging into what that will mean. And I still have to have the follow-up conversation you and I talked about.
Correct, so he still has to have another follow-up conversation with Matt Meyer.
And Bob.
And Bob, if it was capped at 30,000, or if 30,000 was a down payment, because the estimate was around 30,000.
Our reading of the agreement indicates that he should be responsible for the full sum, but that's,
For the full amount,
33,000.
for
33.
the full amount
However.
of the relocation.
Yes.
Yes.
However, DOT is also paying for $12,500 of that in a credit, which we won't see until we go forward with DOT's project. They're holding it in escrow, if you will, until we go forward with that.
So the credit is a result of relocating.
Yeah.
No,
We-
the credit is
The credit is a result of the linear footage and upsizing that occurred on this project. We had to increase the diameter of the pipe that went in for the outfall to accommodate DOT's flows. And we also saved DOT about 100 feet of 27-inch piping that they would have had to pay for us because Matt Meyer's outfall cost it.
That's ours, we're not giving that to Matt Meyer.
No, that's,
But let me add that, and I told Zeke that I don't think we're ready to discuss final numbers
No.
with Matt Myers at
That's right.
this point, because in the estimate that, on which the $30,000 deposit was based, was $6,000 in sprinkler repair and $3,000 in trees or restoration, and we don't know yet how much the sprinkler repair will actually be, for example, or the restoration.
Nor do we know if those trees are gonna survive.
So I
well,
think.
that's
yeah.
it. And there are a couple other items we noticed on the estimate today. For example, lack of any provisions for restoration work and lack of provisions for sidewalk repair that would need to be associated with making those curb cuts. So, you know, I agree with Julie on that still.
So
out.
there's some fine tuning to be done there.
more to come.
Other items that came up in this, rock excavation, this was a big item for quantity inside the contract, and no one would know what it was until they got into it. That was $12,384 in rock excavation and blasting that they had to do. It's just one of the incidentals as a result of the contract and topography you have here. We ran into one major item that was not bid out as part of the project that should have been bid out as part of the project, ran into this late. That are the condominiums over off of Scandia. The name is escaping me right now. They're the ones that are on the right-hand side of the road as you get, I'm sorry, Sunset. I said Scandia, I meant Sunset. It, essentially right across from the marina parking lot. We had to run new lateral lines there. That was about another $33,000 of the contract sum. The others, we had some additional valves that needed to be replaced. That was $8,800. They needed to go. We went ahead and did it. We would have done it as part of routine maintenance as we went through. We were already in the ground. Let's save the money while we're there. And we had a fire hydrant that was bad, that was leaking a fairly large amount of water, so we replaced that. It was a sum of $4,650. It needed to be done anyway, just as a result of line loss and testing later on.
4,600?
$4,650, yes, sir. We did have some miscellaneous items of $6,300. The single biggest item on restoration, we mostly have credits in this account. For example, they did not use $15,000 in restoration money that they could have consumed as part of planting lawns and putting down matting and things of that nature. They didn't touch that. They used it in the, we had a separate line item of $30,000. They consumed all that, so they left us $15,000 on the table. 3139, we did not use the full amount of asphalt curbing that was anticipated. The credit for going ahead and repaving Scandia when we did, or resurfacing Scandia when we did, we made that decision to leave that section unpaved for a time. That saved us $11,160. And then on the temporary asphalt roadway, by pulling and feathering, you notice there are wavy lines going down. It's not a nice straight cut curb. Steve and I made that decision. That saved us about $13,898 to do that. The downside is Dorner is claiming, and John, you won't necessarily like this one either, $53,312 in additional paving cost. One of the issues that was in that contract was that we did not know where the location for the mains were near the Gage property, the marina parking lot. And so we bid it out in some quantities, not knowing what they were. When they got into it, did the location, what they discovered was, oh wait, it runs right under the edge of the marina parking lot, which should have never been paved. And so they had to tear that paving out and put that paving back in, okay? So.
It's always the marina.
Okay. So there's part of that is that cost. They also did some pretty substantial work on driveway repair for our business community. We went out, we did a site investigation, the contractors, the engineer, Steve, myself, and other Steve. We walked every one of these sites. We took a look at what was in place on their driveways and parking lots, and if it looked as if it was something that Dorner tore up or could have torn up, we repaired it, and instead of making minor cuts around the area, we tried to do square cuts so that it would last a longer time period, and they'd have a better parking lot as a result. The pushback Steve and I gave, the final thing that we agreed upon at the staff level was that even though Dorner's claiming $96,000, Donahue agreed with us that we would reduce the sum by $24,000 until we could get the final bid quantities, or I'm sorry, installed quantities agreed upon on what that difference would be. So potentially you've got up to a $96,000 increase over the original contract. We'll be working to get it down to the $84,039.04 sum that Donahue is proposing that Dorner is responsible for, and I'll continue to push for even greater savings than that.
But 30 plus of that is still being paid by
Matt,
Meyer.
yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll make a
So-
motion, we approve it.
We're looking for approval of this payment number for.
Yeah, all of it in one.
Yeah.
And
Right, so move.
Okay, so now does that figure include the dormer bill?
yes.
No, the figure I gave you before,
The,
no, this is attached. I gave you a copy of it, you know.
yeah, so the 864,927.
Does not include the Dorner bill.
So you need a separate motion then for the dormer bill? Or no?
My motion was gonna be the 864 plus the Dorner, everything that's in
Yeah.
this, everything in the package, stapled together.
Sounds good, Pat.
Okay, so, does anybody have a calculator?
Yeah, hang on.
Let's see if I can get this thing to work.
I got it right here.
Can we, I think it might be better
Do it
if we
separately.
Just
did
do
it
it separately?
Okay.
Yeah.
So 864.
You're amending your motion for the 864, correct?
So we have the additional May amounts from the May meeting is one. We have the June amount, and then we have the Dorner bill.
Okay, so right now, we're working on the 864, 927.89, which is
Okay.
Pat's motion. Was there a second to that?
Yeah, I seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the Dorner bill is
400 and,
$454,234.06. Is there a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, so the dormer bill, what amount?
454, 234.06. And what was the May amount, Juliana?
37,176 plus 19,680. It gives you an aggregate total of 1.376018.
No. What were the May numbers, just the May numbers?
37,176.
Point?
0.87
Okay.
plus 19,680.10.
Okay. What's the total of just May?
Sorry, sir. $58,856.97.
856.97. All right, so we need a motion to add the May dollars of 58,856.97.
So moved. I did that before we started all this.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hear that? That side of the table.
I love, yeah, I
Wow.
just spend money.
Are you all set, Janelle?
I think so. Can I read it back to you?
Sure.
All right, so Dave made a motion that was seconded by Pam that the monthly bills depicted on the reports included in the meeting packets totaling 864,927.89 are all approved. Then Scott made a motion, and that was seconded by John, that the Dorner construction bill in the amount of $454,234.06 is approved. And then Nora made a motion, and that was seconded by Pam, that the May expenditures which were unavailable at the May board meeting in the amount of $58,856.97 are.
I get 56,856.
56?
56,856.97.
Oh.
Sorry.
Dueling
So
calculators.
amended.
I don't have a calculator.
I'm gonna go with
so
the
I was
pencil
gonna do
over
it
there.
slower.
Notice that Zeke isn't bothering to check his, he just going to.
Let's just go with Juliana's.
Defer to the finance director.
9:45.
Okay, we good to go?
Yep.
Okay. Item number 16, discussion regarding matters replaced in future agenda referred to committee official or employee. We had a couple based on public comment tonight.
I've got refer to Plan Commission, Act 215, and building on non-conforming lots. The amended, that does need to go back to committee. Mission statement of vision for Marina Fest referred to Marina Committee. Going to send a letter to the restaurants reminding them of the deadlines and the items that we discussed tonight. We'll also be working with the inspector to make sure there's an August 1 deadline on his inspections. And I made a note for you guys to consider, and that would be to issue some kind of letter to thank Donna for your time of service.
I was going to bring that up now that you're not here. We need to do the regular resolution and the plaque like we do for everybody else.
Yeah.
Agreed. And we invite her back and we can do the next meeting. Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
Anything else? Moving right along, committee reports, I have a suggestion. Unless somebody has something they really want to say about a committee report, I know you've all reviewed them, read them. I don't think we need to be discussed any further.
Motion to adjourn.
I just have one thing.
I did want to say one thing though, John. We've got a check coming from Coastal Byway for $5,000.
Hey.
You know?
Good.
Make it out to me.
Thank you, Scott.
Library dedication, we're gonna get an invitation as a village, and it's July 12th, and it's at 11 a.m. for the garden. So if you can attend, it's just a short little ceremony with refreshments. So they've been working hard on it. That's it.
Anybody else in any of the committee reports?
I have one final item to report on, and that is I, pursuant to the authorization that you all gave me prior to this, just accepted the offer from the apparent high bidder. They placed an escrow of $1,000 for a total sum of the sale of $20,000 for these South Highland properties. You all will receive $20,000 upon closing.
That's great. Good. Very good. Thank you.
And I have some timesheets, board timesheets that I still need. I need.
Me?
I'm missing 3. You said you sent yours by email,
Yeah.
right?
Mine will be tomorrow.
You've got a check mark by mine.
Yes, I got you.
Okay.
And you're gonna double check.
Okay, there was a motion
Huh?
made by John to adjourn. Was there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a long
So
night.
are we having a meeting next